How is everybody? Wait a minute. How is everybody?
Oh, shoot.
There we go. Gotta turn my own stream off. So, today is a special day, is a special stream, because today I'm not even going to be, playing a game. I actually have a special guest. Guest, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Montyspa. I have a YouTube channel.
Right.
That's basically it.
Okay, now, here's the thing. Here's the reason that the two of us came together to do this stream. Way back in early 2019, when I was still in my first year of doing YouTube videos, I did a Let's Play of Dark Souls, and I hated that game. I stopped doing the Let's Play after only 13 episodes because, A, it was not only boring, it was downright painful for me to play through, and B, the series wasn't getting any views, so I just stopped doing it because there was literally no reason for me to do it. Well, in early 2020, I made a retrospective video explaining my dislike for the game in a bit more detail. And of course, as you might have guessed, that set off fireworks by Dark Souls fans who don't think I have the right to not like Dark Souls. In the spring of 2021, Montyspa here actually made his own response video, which was literally just, in fact, I'm going to switch to that for you right here. Right here. Dark Souls retrospective, Dark Souls sucks, and here's why. And he obviously made his response arguments. I became aware of the response. I became aware that video existed, so I decided, okay, I'll give him a single solitary benefit of the doubt. Now, over the past year and a half, I have received quite a lot of toxic BS from Dark Souls fans who don't think I have the right to not like the game. So I was quite weary about what to expect. So I watched the first 8 minutes of that video, and the arguments he raised, they honestly seem to be pretty much exactly the same arguments, sometimes almost word for word, that I had already refuted in the comment sections of my own video dozens of times before. So I just posted a comment in his video saying, look, I've done this song and dance before, I don't care anymore, so you can take your response video and you can just live in. I'm not engaging with this because I've already engaged with it. Well, Montyspa here didn't seem to like that very much. So, when I posted my video on YouTube asking for nominations to videos that I can react to on stream, he actually submitted that form nominating his own video, because of course anytime you want me to react to any video, it's obviously going to be your own video, because people are just vain that way. But no, I already made my case for. I already told the guy I have no intention of responding to the exact same arguments that I've already responded to. So I sent him an email, because he provided his email address when he submitted the form, and I told him that. And shitstorm ensued, hours long, back and forth emails, where he just begged me, it was just nag, and it became pretty obvious, this guy isn't gonna leave me the hell alone. So he pretty much asked me to come onto my channel and do a live discussion, not a written email or YouTube comment one, but a live discussion, and he even agreed to let me choose the rules for that debate. So the rules that he chose, well, the rules, no, he didn't choose them, sorry. I finally just gave in simply just to finally get him to shut up. But here's basically I gave him 7 rules to follow here. Number 1, he's going to have to hold the burden of proof in this discussion. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, anytime I ask him a question, he always has to give straight answers to that question. That doesn't mean he has to answer with a yes or a no. But his questions do have to be his answers do have to be straightforward and objective and unambiguous. Rule number 3. Whenever he speaks about objective facts, he must always provide sources. And as you can see, he's sent me quite a few sources that I'm going to, and a few of these tabs are my own tabs that I'm going to be playing around, that I'm going to be using when it comes up in this discussion. But a lot of these are sources that he sent to me. So that is rule number 3. Rule number 4: whenever he speaks subjectively, he must acknowledge that these are just his opinions, and they're also my opinions, and that opinions can never be right or wrong. Rule number 5: he cannot interrupt me when I'm giving an answer. You guys who have seen my YouTube videos before, you know that I tend to ramble. Simple Shooter, thank you for coming to the stream. Yes, Montyspa right now is just listening patiently while I give the introduction. I'm almost finished, don't worry. So, because I'm not going to ramble, at least I don't think I will, though I've probably rambled a little bit in this intro already, but I want to make sure I am thorough with my responses, and I don't want him to interrupt me when I'm giving a response. So that's rule number 5. Rule number 6, he must remain civil with me throughout the entire discussion. And I expect this is when he's going to break eventually, because it's always, anytime they try to explain shit to me and I'm just not persuaded by their arguments, they tend to get pretty toxic. So I expect Montyspa will be doing this and will break this rule pretty soon. And rule number 7. Once this stream is over, the entire discussion is over. Win, lose, or draw, he agrees to drop it. At least insofar as my opinion on Dark Souls is concerned from here on out. This is his last chance to convince me of anything regarding that game or the Dark Souls retrospective video. So, those are the 7 rules that I have set forth for him, and he has agreed to follow those rules. So, Montyspa, are you ready to get this party started? Because if you are, I'd like to make an opening statement about your response video before you provide an argument. Are you ready?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay, now, your response video... Hold on, let me reload the page here. So, I hate it when it does that. Doesn't pause as soon as I press the button anyway. Anyway, starting at 1 minute and 4 seconds of your response video, and it's a little bit more than 30 seconds later, those are the 2 timestamps. You say this about your experience watching my Dark Souls retrospective video. Hang on, let me turn the volume up.
I noticed a suggested video in my sidebar, and it was a Dark Souls video. And I was like, fuck yeah, I love Dark Souls. And it was a Dark Souls retrospective even. Those are classics. But my joy turned to ash in my mouth.
Acerthorn, if it's playing audio, I can't hear it at least.
You can't hear.
No, I can't hear what it's saying.
Okay, let me just tell you.
Oh, well, okay, simple can, so maybe I'm just... Oh, I'm actually stupid. It's because I'm watching the stream, but the stream audio is muted. I'm sorry, that's on me.
Okay, are we still connected on Discord?
Yeah, it should be fine. Yeah, just give me a minute. Can you go back to the thing, because I have to turn off my mic so that I can like turn off my mic so I can listen to the stream and it doesn't, play over the top, you know what I mean?
Okay.
All right. Yeah, you can start now.
When I noticed a suggested video in my sidebar, and it was a Dark Souls video, and I was like, fuck yeah, I love Dark Souls. And it was a Dark Souls retrospective even. Those are classics. But my joy turned to ash in my mouth as I finished reading the title of the video. Dark Souls retrospective, Dark Souls sucks, and here's why.
Okay. Did you hear all that? You can turn your mic back on again.
Yeah, I heard him.
Okay. I wanna nip this in the bud right off the bat because I feel it is very, very important to everything we are about to discuss. And bear in mind that this is all by your own admission here. By your own admission, you had already made up your mind about my retrospective video before you even watched 1 second of the video itself, solely based on the fact that I didn't like the game. And secondly, you were excited to watch the Dark Souls retrospective, and your excitement turned to anxiety when you realized that it was a negative review. In other words, by your own admission, you were quite happy to engage with people on discussions about Dark Souls, but only if that person's opinions align with your own. Because my title expressed a negative opinion about the game, you were pretty much ready to judge my video sight unseen. You may have actually watched the video to actually get stuff that you could retort against. But the only thing, and this is important, however, by your own admission, any counter-arguments you came up with were necessarily retroactively created after you had decided that my video is going to suck. And I just think it's important that we preface that because because it just shows just how little in good faith and how disingenuous you are, that you are unwilling to that you're not willing to hear me out before you form your opinion about it. Instead, you judge the video based entirely on the title. So that is the thing that I wanted to start this out with, because I think it's going to be a huge main theme in the discussion we have today. So, do you understand what I just said?
Yeah, I understand.
So, do you have any response to that? To the fact that you judged me based solely on the title?
No. I would say that I disagree with your assessment of what happened when I saw it. For starters, a point in the video at the start, I was more so trying to make the video lighthearted. I was making a joke. The next thing that I say is something along the lines of how I ran upstairs to grab like a body pillow because I was so upset. So I was very much Jesus, man, I'm like the mic is
I can hear you.
Sorry. No, yeah, I know it's peaking. I can hear it in my own thing. Can you hear me fine from this distance?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say that beginning part was very much a joke, because again, the whole like body pillow part after that, I was very much making a joke. I would not say that I had already made any assumptions about your video, because I have watched Dark Souls retrospectives in the past that have made criticisms that I was completely fine with accepting. I mean, I criticize Dark Souls on certain things. I understand that there are things to criticize the game for. Obviously, I was upfront in my video about this at the start. I said something along the lines of, like, Dark Souls is admittedly my favorite game of all time, so I am biased towards the game, but I acknowledge that it has problems, and I'd be willing to admit issues that I have with it, right now if we really needed to go into that. So I would not say that I had already made an assessment about your video. I was obviously upset that you didn't like the game necessarily, because I like the game so much. It's disappointing when other people don't share your views on something. But
no, it's not. I mean, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have interrupted. Please go ahead.
That's fine. My point is just that it was after watching the video that I realized more so, like, I very much disagree with some of the things that were said in your video. I don't think that some of the points you made were very good. Some of the criticisms that you levied against the game, well, for starters, there were some things that I was just like, these are just factual inaccuracies or whatever. And there were other things where I was like, okay, this is an opinion that you can have, but the way that you presented your information, I didn't like how you went about it. I disagreed with how you presented certain things. I thought that it was being very unfair to the game. So that would be my response to that.
I disagree that it's disappointing when someone doesn't like the thing you like. I mean, like, you even mentioned that you were going to be using, what was it? Oh yeah, why I demand civility in the comments of my videos. And one of the arguments that I make in that video, is it's just a game, so how does that affect you? I mean, I watch all kinds of YouTube channels for people who consistently express opinions that differ from my own, because I enjoy engaging in that kind of discourse. I enjoy the exchange of new ideas that I hadn't considered before. So no, I don't feel disappointed when somebody doesn't like a game that I like, because A, it doesn't hurt me, and B, it's always fun to exchange the ideas. So unless they're actually literally violating me, then no, I'm not going to get pissed off at it. And it's just like I said when I analyzed your intro. I feel like, and you just admitted it, at least partially, and this time it was not a joke, that to you, me liking a game that you like is something that you have a personal stake in, and I wholly disagree about that. So anyway, you wanted to. I don't even know what exactly you're here to try to argue with me on, because you've kept your cards pretty close to your chest while we were setting this up. Basically, you wanted to say that my reviews are crappy and that I have trouble taking feedback somehow. So you want to start it off?
Yeah, well, to the first thing that you were saying about me, I'd like to respond to that. When I said that I didn't mean I had a personal stake in whether or not you like Dark Souls or whatever. It was a statement of, like, it's always disappointing when you see someone who reviews content that, like, doesn't like what you like. But again, the more important point is that if they are criticizing something that you enjoy, that the criticisms are well-founded. As I said, I've watched Matthew Matosis has like a 6-hour-long video on Dark Souls, and for full disclosure, he very clearly likes the game, but he also levied several criticisms against it that were like, these are irrefutable issues with the game, and I left that video being like, hey, I still love this game, but I can acknowledge that, like, there are indeed problems with it. So, you know, I wouldn't say that, like, the fact that you disliked it or whatever painted my view so heavily already at the start. I was interested in how you were going to support that, you know, the title, your thesis or whatever.
Well,
and I felt as though it didn't. Sorry.
No, you can finish. I was waiting for you to finish before I said my piece. Go ahead.
I was just saying that I was concerned with the evidence that you provided to support your claim, and I didn't feel as though it was substantial. Or,
well,
you know, sometimes I felt as though it was presented inappropriately or potentially even in a disingenuous manner. There was some information that was just flat out wrong, and I was just, you know, as to your second thing that you were getting into, you know, what my point is with debating you on this, I fully don't intend to, I fully don't think that I'm going to be able to change your mind on this game. I think that you're very set in stone about it, but I think that perhaps I can change your thoughts on how you criticize things, certain, like some of your methods in which you do it, and perhaps criticize the way that you respond to criticism, because, you know, a lot of people levy, why do I keep saying that? A lot of people suggest that you can't take criticism, and you suggest the opposite, but I have some things that I've seen from your comment section where, like, you know, I think maybe it does point to an idea that maybe not intentionally, but maybe, like, you do struggle in some instances with that, and I thought this would just be a way for me to kind of air my grievances against how you criticize things, how you respond to people sometimes, all of these kind of things. And I think that I speak for, you know, a decent amount of people that maybe watch your channel, because not you know, we don't always we're not all trying to just, you know, shit on you and watch you fail and burn, right? Like, when I first watched your video, every time I was like, you know, my video in response to you, for example, I know that you said I engaged in the whole sarcastic deification. We can get into that, whatever. But I felt as though I kept it very, very lighthearted. It wasn't, like, intended as, like, something to, you know, just shit on you and then leave it at that. Anyways, that was a ton of stuff. I'm sorry, you can respond.
Well, the thing is that I don't think there is a right or wrong way to do a review, because whether a review is good is just as opinionated as whether the game is good. There's really no objective right or wrong to game quality or review quality. There is only a difference of opinion and people's, such as yourselves, inability to accept a difference of opinion.
Can I respond to that real quick?
Absolutely.
If that's the case, why do you ask for criticism on your videos then?
Mostly because I'm trying to get some. I'm trying to do focus testing to see how to grow the channel more efficiently.
But don't you think that? Don't you ask for criticism because you want to be a better critic? Don't you think that would make your channel grow faster? No.
I do, but however, I don't see why. You posted your response video and you said your piece. I found it to be entirely redundant of the comments that I had already responded to, and I told you as much. But then you just kept borderline harassing me about this until I finally gave in. I mean, yeah, I'm willing to accept criticism, but I'm not. That doesn't mean I should have to put up with people nagging me because I'm not giving them what they want.
Okay, well, I disagree with the fact that my criticism of your video was entirely redundant. And one of the points that I kept making while we were emailing back and forth, and also kind of in the comment thread, was the fact that I hadn't made any points up until that point in the video. The only point that I had really addressed at that point was the start of your video in which you start the whole thing with your fans, which I was bringing up, but I hadn't actually made like any definitive statements at that point. So my problem with you saying, well, this is entirely redundant, and then you just kind of insisted that the entire video afterwards was redundant, was that you were making an assumption of my first point, and then from that you made an assumption about my entire video, and then you decided from there on, this isn't even worth my time to review. This isn't even, there's nothing worth here that might actually be a substantial criticism. And I think that maybe that could be a point against you when people say that you can't take criticism, because it's like, it's an avoidance of criticism, if you know what I mean.
Okay. I did not just assume that your entire video was going to be redundant of comments that I had already responded to. You actually admitted to it, and while you were saying that, I actually pulled up the comment where you said this and highlighted the relevant section. Let me switch to that now. Here you go. I'm making a video response to your video, not your comment section. I don't care if other people have voiced criticisms and you've responded to them. So, there it is in black and white. You plain out admitted, affirmatively admitted. You didn't just fail to contest this. You straight up admitted that you weren't even trying to provide anything new. You weren't even trying to bring anything new to the table. So I decided not to even bother with the rest of the video. Not because I had decided that it was going to be redundant of stuff that I had already responded to, but because you admitted that you weren't even trying to offer anything new.
Hold on, let me, I gotta pull up that video.
Here, here, I'm showing you the video right now on the screen.
Yeah, can you go down to our comments?
Yeah, here you go. Here it is.
Go up. I'm not interested in that one. I want to look at the ones above it, if you don't mind. Hold on.
Please don't take forever to do this. I'd like to keep this moving at a quick pace.
My point is that you had started, we started messaging after you had already given my video a shot, and at that point you had already given up on it. So me saying this, you had already decided at that point that the video wasn't worth watching. So I don't see why it's relevant. On top of that, I would say that after reviewing your comment section, I don't believe that you actually have answered a lot of things that I've made in my video. Even if I am responding only to the points in your video, I also made the point that my criticisms of your video were far more explained, they were far more thorough than anyone in a comment section could be. When someone writes a comment, if you want to make a well-defined point, you have to go through you have to write a whole fucking 3-page MLA essay, you know what I mean? Cite your sources, all that crap. With a video, my video is an hour long, so it's I can explain my points far more thoroughly. I have video evidence backing up some of my points, which other people don't, which I thought maybe would make my points better. And again, the whole thing with your Sir replies and all that stuff, I've gone through all of them at this point, and I don't believe that you actually have answered a lot of the criticisms that I levy against you. So
okay, I'm pulling up the comments that you took the screenshots of these comments and sent them to me. So as you can see, I've got those on screen now. Can you provide me with some examples?
Yeah, do you want to start with kind of how the video was going with your points? So we would start with kind of the the fans' point, or do you want to start with like the things that I think you just got objectively wrong and go from there, maybe?
Let me hang on a minute. Let me pull up my notes here. I actually have some. Now, the whole harping on me about me blaming the fans for not watching the Let's Play. That is one criticism that I actually did watch in your video. So I want to explain this in great detail. So this is going to take a while, so bear with me, because I got a very thorough response right here in my notes.
All right.
Okay. You said that YouTubers are, and you use this exact word here, YouTubers are blessed for any views they get.
Mm-hmm.
I disagree with, and unless this was meant to be yet another joke to keep it lighthearted, then I think you just went so far out of line with saying that, and I'm going to explain why. First of all, I'm not gonna be upset. I don't think. Maybe I subconsciously do this more than maybe I do this more than I consciously realize I do, but I don't think that I am upset, that I just obsess over semantics like this. But it's important to understand that the thing about a blessing is that it is something that can only come directly from God himself. So I believe that you were just way out of line by saying that YouTube video getting views is a blessing, because that would be like if a woman was on the street and a man started whistling and catcalling her, and she has every right to be upset about that, but then in response to that she calls him a rapist. I mean, maybe he was being disrespectful, but calling him a rapist is just too strong a word. And in this context, saying that I am blessed to have views, first of all, that is just too strong a word as well. So now that's
okay, wait, can I ask something about that?
Make it quick. I want to finish this.
Okay. All right. My question is, are you upset about the fact that I used the word blessed as in like the fact that it has religious connotations? Is that the problem?
I am a man of faith, but I just wanted to nip that in the bud, but I'm not going to harp on it. I was ready to move on from that. So yeah, I was kind of a little bit peaked at that, but it's not something that we're going to get to the good stuff in a minute. Don't worry.
Okay. All right.
You seem to be of the belief that the YouTuber-subscriber relationship is entirely a one-way street, that viewers should be allowed to lie, deceive, manipulate the YouTube channel owner, and the YouTuber just has to sit there and take it, and they need to be grateful for whatever table scraps come our way. I could not disagree more. Imagine, here's a hypothetical example here. Imagine if a parent asks their child what they wanted to eat, like how I held that poll asking my fans what they wanted my next Let's Play to be. The child requests a rather expensive and very difficult to cook meal, so you go and buy all the ingredients, you spend hours in the kitchen cooking that meal for them just because they asked for it, and then when it's served, they just say they're not hungry and they don't eat the food. You would be rightfully quite pissed off, wouldn't you? Now, I know what you're thinking. That is not a reasonable analog to the current situation, because in a parent-child relationship, there is a clear chain of authority, a clear power dynamic that the YouTuber's subscriber relationship simply does not have. Okay, here's another example. Imagine if you ask a woman out on a date, and she agrees to go out on a first date with you. So you schedule a time, you schedule a place, she agrees to be there, and then you get all dolled up, and you go to that restaurant, or wherever it is you agreed to meet, and she just doesn't show up. And when you meet her the next day, she just says, well, she didn't feel like it. And then imagine if everyone, obviously you would be quite pissed off at that, and then imagine if everyone acted like you were the self-entitled one. Oh, she doesn't owe you a damn thing. Kind of like how, I mean, even if she agreed to meet you there for the date, she still doesn't owe you anything. You are blessed that a female is paying you any attention whatsoever. Now that's a relationship where where nobody is supposed to have any more power than the other, so it's a far more relatable situation. Now I just want to say this: asking for any relationship at all to be exclusively a one-way street where one party has all the power, that is almost always the most toxic, manipulative, exploitative type of relationship out there, and it doesn't matter what the relationship is: husband and wife, country and citizen, employer and employee. Hell, even the relationships that you think are naturally deserve to be inherently one-sided, such as prison and inmate. That's a relationship that most people believe where one party should have all the power and the other party should have none. And yet, at least here in America, the current prison system has some of the highest recidivism rates in the developed world, whereas countries like Sweden and Norway have ridiculously low recidivism rates, and they treat their inmates much more humanely. And their recidivism rates show that they must be doing something right. So even in relationships that are inherently supposed to be one-sided, that it is still almost always a recipe for complete disaster. So no, I do not accept your assertion that even when fans ask specifically for that specific series, that I do not have the right to even so much as be disappointed. I wasn't even angry at them. I wasn't vengeful or anything like that. I merely expressed my disappointment about the lack of views. Just the disappointment. And even more importantly, if you actually go back and watch my Dark Souls retrospective video, you will find that I explicitly stated that I was not bringing up the lack of views as just to complain about the lack of views for its own sake, but rather the thing that I brought up, I only brought it up in order to explain why I hadn't finished the game yet. Mm-hmm. That is why I brought it up. So you're acting like I'm all entitled when really I only brought it up in the first place in order to explain something that I knew a lot of people were going to care a lot more about. So you're really just making by spending so much time on your hour-long video talking about how entitled I am. The fact that you expect the YouTuber subscriber relationship, or any relationship for that matter, to be entirely a one-way street where one party has all the power to it, that just makes you come off as almost as entitled as you accuse me of being, and B, that wasn't even the reason I brought it up in the first place, so you're completely straw-manning me at that point.
No, I disagree with that.
Disagree with you strawmanning me, or disagree with the fact that one-way relationships are toxic and manipulative?
The strawmanning. I mean, that wasn't the point of my video. I said at the start that I was also going to criticize how I thought you behaved in the video to an extent, and part of that was my issue with how I felt you were treating your fans when you said in your video that you were upset that the video had underperformed and that the fans lied to you and stuff. To me, that just came across as, I don't know, self-entitled, I guess. I felt that, when you're talking about the one-sided relationships and how that shouldn't be the case. But, the point that I was trying to make is that if you don't treat your fans well, if they leave you, you're done. A YouTube channel is based entirely on whether or not it has a following, right? Like, if you lose your following, these are the people that enable you to make a living, right? You said yourself you wanted to make a living on YouTube. My point was that like, if you treat them like this, why would they stick around for you and not go somewhere else? There's a million people on this site that do retrospectives, that make reviews on content. If you're gonna, you know, I felt that it came across way too strongly on your part. And to your point about the it wasn't even the focus of your video, and you only brought it up in order to justify why the video didn't have views. My extra point on top of that is, why would you even address it like that in the first place? Why would you come off and sound extremely upset with your fans? I thought that you came across as quite angry with them, that they you know, quote unquote lied to you or whatever. You didn't need to make that an issue in the first place. It would have been just as easy to say, hey guys, just for full disclosure, oh my god, I can't talk. Just for full disclosure, you know, I was doing this Let's Play, and while playing it, it wasn't getting as many views as I would have hoped, and I didn't enjoy the game on top of that, so therefore I just decided to, like, you know, not go ahead and do anything more with it. I decided to stop it. Like, it would have been just as easy to do that and not bring in the whole getting upset with your fans thing in the first place, which just, from, again, I was a completely neutral person at this point. I had come into your channel, I'd never seen you before. It was extremely off-putting to me. I looked at that and said, well, if that's how Acerthorn treats the people that are literally subscribed to him, like, why the hell should I even subscribe? What's the person saying that they just hear a ding? Can they hear us?
I'm looking at the chat right now. Oh, Acer got a point. Well, thank you, Ryan. That is one of my newest subscribers. Did I just hear a Discord ding lol? Yeah, somebody, I heard the ding myself, but I didn't, can't see any win. Okay. Man, no. Man, 4 viewers. Come on, man. Is it worth streaming? Yes. Okay. Yes, it is. Anyway.
Yeah, okay, let me finish my statement here for a minute. So getting on past that, the final thing that I would like to point out, aside from the fact that I didn't feel it was necessary at all to bring the fans in, and something that I would suggest to you, again, this is criticism, but, like, I'm trying to help you here. It was extremely off-putting to me as a new person who could have potentially become a subscriber. And then the other point that I would have made is the fact that I don't think that you proved that your fans did lie to you. So something I'd like to ask you really quick is, when you made that statement and you said, this is like practically verbatim in your video, you were saying, I was upset because the video underperformed and that the fans lied to me. Were you referring to your fan base as a whole, or were you referring to the specific 6 people that took the poll?
First of all, there were 15 people who took the poll. Only 6 of them voted for Dark Souls.
Okay, that's my point. Only 6 voted for Dark Souls, so only those 6 people are relevant in this discussion.
Right, and I do not know where you got it in your head that I was blaming my fan base as a whole. Of course I wouldn't expect anybody who wasn't interested in the content to watch it. Of course, so no, I'd like to know exactly what it is that I said or in that video that gave you the idea that my video, that I was blaming anybody except those 6 who voted for it, who said, yes, we want that to be your next Let's Play.
Yeah, I can answer that. The fact that you said you were upset that they underperformed. What is underperforming relative to 6?
Getting 0 views, or getting like 2 views that have an average view duration of less than a minute each.
The only thing that you cited in your video was a screenshot of the final episode, which had 70 views.
70 views? You mean 70 views when I actually, at the time, you mean 70 views when I Actually, during the first week when it went up, or 70 views at the time that you saw my retrospective video and went to check?
No, well, I have checked all your videos, and they do have over 6 views now, but I'm talking about the screenshot that you supplied in your video. It had 70 views in that screenshot.
Right, because like I said, when I first started this stream, I did the Let's Play in early 2019 and the Dark Souls retrospective video in early 2020. So that video had, by the time that I got around to doing the retrospective video, that final episode had a whole year to start accumulating views.
Okay. But your only expectation was that there would be 6, and it had 70.
Yeah, because at the time that I did that poll, I had less than 50 subscribers, and my videos were currently rocking about 2 to 3 views at a time within the first week or so, within the first day or first couple of days. So for as small as I was at the time, 6 high retention views, consistent high retention views, would have been plenty for me to grow my channel, considering how small I was at the time.
Okay, but you haven't proven that the 6 people didn't watch it, is my point.
Because in the first few days, in the first week or so after those videos went up, the views that each episode got were either literally 0 views, or only had about 2 to 3 views of less than a minute each. So those 6 people couldn't possibly have actually watched the video, have actually given me the minuscule but performance that was minuscule, but which I was reasonably expecting.
Okay, well, I would just still say that in your video, you were framing it a certain way, and the source, what you cited was that your final video had 70 views, which I think, is justification for why I was confused with why you would say that it was underperforming, because I'd also like to point out that the video that you chose to cite, interestingly, because you also supplied the viewer duration and stuff, and yeah, it had a low viewer duration, I don't deny that, but something else is I watched at least part of that video, and within the first minute, you admitted full up that you weren't even going to continue the Let's Play at that point. So my point is, if those people had been like, well, I'm really interested in watching Acerthorn play through this video, why would they even bother? Or not video, sorry, game. Like, at that point, why would they bother? I thought it was interesting that you chose to cite that video, that episode in specific, where you admit at the start that you were going to stop it, which would give people plenty of reason to be like, okay, well, there's no point in watching this further. I think that's a confounding variable that might...
Because the screenshot that I provided that showed the average view duration that was less than a minute long, at the time, that was for the that was in the thumbnail for that video, and it was also, I don't know how far into that final video you watched, but it was also in the video itself. Now think about that for a minute. If I was providing that screenshot in the video, in the final video, then obviously the screenshot itself would have to have come from the analytics page of a previous video. See? So clearly, when I provided that screenshot, that wasn't because that you say that me deciding to stop you doing the Let's Play is what caused people to stop viewing. Well, by the time that I had made that announcement, at least publicly, I already had the analytics to show that they weren't watching the video any damn way.
No, I don't understand. No, I'm not talking about in your Let's Play. I'm talking about in the retrospective. The example that you supplied to showcase that the video was underperforming was you showed a screenshot of the 7th or the 13th episode, which was your final one, which had 70 views when you screenshotted it, and the average viewer duration which you supplied was 43 seconds. And my point is that you were making the whole point about it underperforming, but don't you see how that's contradictory evidence then if you
No,
if
because
you're saying that
No,
If
because
you're
that
saying that it underperformed relative to 6, and you supply a video that showcases it got at least 70 views.
no, the screenshot that I provided was supposed to show an average viewed. The screenshot that I provided was supposed to show the final episode of the Let's Play, and that was the episode where I went into greater detail as to why I felt that the video was underperforming. Bear in mind, the fact that the video was underperforming, the fact that the Let's Play was underperforming was not the focus of the retrospective video. I only spent I think I spent less than a minute total, maybe 1 to 2 minutes total, talking about the underperformance of the Let's Play. If I provided a screenshot to the final episode because that's where I went into greater detail, so that if anybody wanted to hear the greater details, they could just navigate to that video.
My point... Okay, here's ultimately my point. Even if... My point is that in your retrospective, you didn't supply any legitimate evidence showcasing that your retrospective was underperforming relative to 6. And even if your videos were underperforming relative to 6, I felt that it was completely unnecessary to go after the people that voted for it, because 6 is such a small number to begin with. And on top of that, there could be a myriad of reasons as to why they weren't performing well. Like, perhaps the 6 people were busy, or they had other things going on. Like, you know what I mean? They have their own lives. Anything could have happened. Unless they supplied a reason why they didn't watch it. You know, it could literally be anything. I felt, again, I understand that we haven't even gotten into your video, but I did say I was going to like criticize you to an extent as well. And my point was that I felt that if it was responding to just 6 people, I felt it was completely unnecessary, and again, off-putting to people like myself who are coming into your channel as, you know, a potential new subscriber.
Well,
that was what I was getting at.
Well, I admittedly did not go to very great lengths to establish that the Let's Play was underperforming, because, like I said, that wasn't the focus of the video. I was just providing that for context, not crucifixion. That was just a setup for the explanation that I haven't finished the game, and that might impact the thoroughness of the rest of the video going forward. So I didn't even think about the details of how the video was underperforming, because I didn't care at that point.
All right, look, I can't prove that they weren't underperforming, and you obviously don't have the analytics at the moment to prove that they were or whatever, right? So here's my ultimate thing. I just don't feel as though it was necessary. I felt as though it was very off-putting to new potential viewers. And I'm not the only person that has suggested that maybe the way that you treat your fan base is kind of off-putting to new people. Like when I've seen some of your community tab posts where you're like, you know, I'm disappointed in today's stream turnout and stuff. Like, I'm disappointed that people didn't show up. It's kind of like getting upset at the fans, and it's like, it's just completely unnecessary. Like, it sends such a bad message to me as someone who might watch you. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, why even be like that? You know, you're such a small streamer at this point. Why make a huge deal out of it? It's going to take time for you to grow. The fact that, again, this is my point, the fact that you have any viewers at all is like, okay, you were upset with how I said blessing. I feel as though you're being a bit hyper-literal to, you know, take that into account. But it's, the fact of the matter is that there's a million people on YouTube. There's probably billions of people on YouTube. Well, maybe not literally billions, but like millions upon millions who literally never make it, who never grow any channel at all. The people that will never even... They'll work at it for years and they'll never, ever, ever take off. So the fact that you're lucky enough that you've started down that path is like a huge thing, and I feel like maybe you're just expecting way too much way too early on. And when you call out your fans for stuff like this, it just, one, it feels entirely unnecessary, and two, it's completely off-putting to people like myself who would potentially become a subscriber, watch you on Twitch, support you, things along those lines.
Well,
that's my point.
when I make an analysis video, I don't tend to skive on the details. Like, take for example, like right now you can see my channel. Let me sort my videos based on most popular. Right now, my Dark Souls retrospective video is not the most successful video on the channel, but it's still in the top row. The only retrospective that is more popular than that, as you can see, is the Skyrim retrospective, and that's like 2 hours and 53 minutes long. So when I do an analysis video, I do not skive on the details. I go be as thorough as I can be. So yeah, I half-assed the details on the video, on the underperformance of the Let's Play in that retrospective. But considering that how thorough I normally am, I felt I was going out of my way to provide even that few details.
I mean, you provided details, but my point is that you didn't actually prove what you were saying. It kind of proved the opposite.
I wasn't trying to prove that. That wasn't the point. That wasn't my thesis. That the game sucked. I mean, can we all at least agree that regardless of whether I blame my fans or anybody, whether the game itself sucked, the Let's Play's performance is not the game's fault itself. Like, From Software is not to blame for my Let's Play underperforming, period. So, my point of that video was to explain why I felt that Dark Souls sucks, not why I am still salty a whole year later over my Let's Play underperforming. That was not the point. The point was to point out how I felt Dark Souls sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just saying that it felt entirely unnecessary to bring the point in about your fans in general. What you're saying right here, right now, I completely agree with. It wasn't relevant. It didn't need to be stated. But, okay, I don't feel like we're getting anywhere with this, so do you want to move on to, like, the topics of the video?
Okay,
like an hour.
Alright. Let's do this.
Okay. So, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Would you agree or disagree that you get the criticism pretty often that you can't take criticism? Yeah? You would agree with that?
I would agree that I get it from a lot of people who are vile and toxic. Yes.
Okay. So, perhaps, one of the ways that we can kind of put that past, maybe one of the ways you can kind of disprove that is by admitting to some of the mistakes that you made in the video. Yeah.
Okay.
So
yes, I can. I can accept that I might have made some factual inaccuracies.
Okay.
Yes.
You said in the video that the game is an RPG, and you made a big deal about it because of the whole thing with the most important part of an RPG is the story and all that, right?
Exactly.
Do you still believe it's an RPG?
Yes, and I looked at the sources you provided for me, I skimmed over them, and those sources still also say it's an RPG.
No, they don't. FromSoft one says that it's an action RPG.
That's still an RPG.
But they're a subgenre of action games. They only incorporate role-playing game mechanics. Dark Souls is primarily an action game with a leveling system thrown in. It has an upgrading system thrown in.
Then it shouldn't have been called an RPG.
It's not called an RPG. That's my point.
Yeah, hang on a minute. Right here. Whoa, hang on. See? These letters. Right here. It says, in black and white, RPG. It's an
but it's an action RPG. Action RPG and RPG are not the same thing. It's one title.
I still feel I have the right to expect an RPG when the genre says RPG.
But my point is that an action RPG and an RPG are two different genres.
No, I disagree. Action RPG sounds like I mean, by that logic, CRPG is a completely different genre, and JRPG and WRPG are also two completely different genres. No. If an action RPG is just a subgenre of the RPG genre.
No, subgenre of the action genre on Wikipedia.
And if it, well, Wikipedia is not a reliable source. Anybody can change. Anybody can edit Wikipedia, so you don't need. I mean, does it? Okay, instead, let me pull that up. Okay, now where in this? Can you show me where in this article it says? Hang on, let me finish the question.
Okay. All right.
Where in this article does it say? I want to know two things. First, where in this article it says that an action RPG does not need to have any of the most important elements of an RPG. Like, I don't care if it has a leveling up system, that's not the most important part of an RPG. The most important part of an RPG is its story. So I want you to show me where it says that an action RPG does not need where a story takes the backseat in an action RPG, and then over here in section 6 where it actually provides a reference, because Wikipedia on its own doesn't count for squat. I want to see the references that Wikipedia cites, not Wikipedia itself.
Well, I don't think it does explicitly state that the story in particular takes a back seat.
So there you have it. It's the sort of thing where we just should agree to disagree, and the fact that you don't want to accept that.
If you go down to subgenres, it says action role-playing games, which does, that backs up my claim that they are subgenre of action games. It says include features of role-playing games such as characters with experience points and statistics. It features elements of role-playing games.
And have you actually checked the? But you see, first of all, that this doesn't have a source to it, so it's literally just some dude who we don't even know who came in at somebody somewhere on planet Earth came in at some point in between the year 2007 when Wikipedia was founded and the present, and just inserted this, and so far nobody has actually asked for a source or provided one. I could, if I wanted to, click edit here, and then at the end of this sentence type citation requested, and then I could wait a few weeks, wait for somebody to swoop in and provide a source, and if they don't, Wikipedia's own policies say that this needs to go, because if you don't, you can cite anything that isn't common knowledge on Wikipedia needs to have a source. Right now, this does not have a source, so Wikipedia. I'm sorry, but you might as well be telling me. You might as well be calling Donald Trump to provide eyewitness testimony. It's about as Wikipedia is about as credible as a 10-pound pile of dog shit, unless it has a different source other than Wikipedia itself.
Okay, fine, but how do you refute the From Software page, which is the official page for the, they're the developers. The genre says action RPG. And putting action in front is not the same as defining something as a JRPG or a WRPG, because those are just like delineations on where the game came from. If it came from if it's a Japanese role-playing game or a Western role-playing game, that's not impacting the genre. That's just like stating where it came from. So that's different from saying something is an action RPG, where the emphasis is on the action.
I disagree. I would argue that action RPG is just as much a subgenre of the RPG genre as CRPG. C is not a designation of where it came from. That's a subset of the gameplay. Classic RPG. You ever play Dragon Age? You ever play Dragon Age? That's a CRPG. Just a minute. Let me see if let me see if the RPG genre on Wikipedia, RPG page on Wikipedia has any subgenres in it. Okay. It does. Okay.
I mean, you can check, but it doesn't say action RPG at least. I've checked.
Well, I mean, even if it did, I wouldn't be persuaded by it unless it had a source. But the C in CRPG stands for classic. It's basically the Dungeons and Dragons. It's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons, where your ability, where sometimes you hit your opponent and sometimes you miss, but whether you hit or miss is more based on RNG rather than whether you aimed properly. It's like Morrowind had CRPG elements, whereas Oblivion took away the RNG, the randomness to whether or not you hit your opponent in the Elder Scrolls games. Does that make sense?
Sure, but like, what Elder Scrolls games are we talking about? Because I'm pretty sure Oblivion and Skyrim and them, they're also action RPGs.
Right, and they have a heavy emphasis on story too.
Okay, well, here's my point, is that this is where we're not going to agree, because I already know how you feel about this, and you say that everything is 100% subjective and all that stuff. My point is that it's not worthwhile to criticize something on something like that, because Monster Hunter games are also action RPGs, and to suggest that the emphasis of a Monster Hunter game is on the story, like, it's ludicrous. No one judges a Monster Hunter game on the story. If you took the story out of a Monster Hunter game, who gives a shit, right? Like, if you took the combat out, if you took the fighting monsters, well then, yeah, like, that would literally gut the game. So my point is, to that point, I would say, like, it's very much on a spectrum, and Dark Souls falls far more on, like, the one hand of the spectrum, which is like the story is not at all emphasized. Whereas you can take an action role-playing game like Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is based off of a role-playing game. So, like, literally, of course, the story and the characters are far more emphasized in that. My point, like, it's contextual.
Well, I mean,
but
I disagree. If it's billed as an RPG, then I think I have a right to expect some RPG. I mean, like, imagine if this was billed as an FPS platformer. Obviously, you'd expect to shoot, but you'd also expect to jump on things, right? If that was the genre, if this is an action RPG, then I expect a little bit of action and a little bit of RPG. And the most important thing in an RPG is its story.
Well, okay, my point is just that it's primarily an action game with RPG mechanics, which Dark Souls does supply, because it has a stat screen, it has a leveling mechanic attached to it where you have experience, it has upgradable stuff, which is present in, like, most RPGs.
Nowadays, Call of Duty also has the leveling up and gear upgrades, and Call of Duty is not an RPG.
I don't know enough about Call of Duty games.
I don't even play Call of Duty either. I don't play FPS games at all. I'm just using that as an example that the fact that there's that just because those mechanics might have gotten their start in the RPG back in the third generation of consoles when genre designations were clear and bright line, that doesn't mean that is what an RPG is. An RPG is about the story.
That's subjective.
Okay. And, well, if it is subjective, then it can't possibly be unfair that I criticize Dark Souls for not having a story, or at least a very good story.
Okay, so we're not getting anywhere with this. My point was with the RPG was that you called it definitively an RPG. It's not an RPG. It's an action RPG. But Okay, so I do want to get into the story in a minute. We're going to cover that in a minute. But I also wanted to talk about, because someone in your comments brought this point up as well, and this was something I kind of addressed in my video. Obviously, not the specific comment, but if you could.
I got the screenshots you sent me on screen right now.
Yeah, if you could go to the first one that says Action RPG, open that one.
Okay.
So we can look at those.
Which one? You want to go? You want to go in
just
order?
Go in order. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. There.
It's kind of hard to see it on that screen, but I'm reading off of mine. So this person kind of brings up the same point that I'm pointing out, which is that it's an action game first and foremost, not an RPG. And then ignore the second one because it was about the brightness, and that's irrelevant.
Okay.
But you say also it's an action game first and foremost, not an RPG, and then you say no, it's clearly marketed as an RPG. Quit fucking lying. And then yeah, if you go to the second one, where you not that one, the third one or the second one, I mean.
Okay. Yeah, where I have the circle and the arrows.
Yeah, which, I mean, can we just say, like, first up, kind of condescending, you know, maybe a little unnecessary. Circling maybe, but the arrows, a little overkill. My point is, why did you ignore the tag that says action that's higher rated than RPG?
I see no I mean, well, for starters, it says popular user-defined tags, so clearly, whenever tags the developer chooses for this game, the audience gets to decide what order they're in. That doesn't mean it's marketed more as an action game over an RPG. That just means the fans have decided to make it that way.
Well, okay, that's also another interesting thing that you'd bring up, because these are popular user-defined tags for this product. So this is like, you know, this is as reputable as me citing Wikipedia. Then this is worthless.
Right.
This
well,
is just a bunch of people saying crap on Steam.
This is not just a bunch of people saying crap on Steam. This is from the developers.
It is, but it's action RPG, which is a specific
which I don't see how that changes my criticism or renders my criticism invalid or unfair.
Okay. Can we go back to the Steam page? Can you actually bring it up, if you don't mind?
This?
What? This, is that the actual page?
Dark Souls, what does it look, it says Dark Souls Remastered, what does that look like to you?
Alright, can you scroll down?
Scroll down.
Yeah.
To where?
Further down. Not that.
Okay.
Keep going, I'll tell you when to stop, sorry. Oh, wait, there. Steam assigns it a specific genre. I'm interested in... No, go up. Not there. Keep going. A little more.
You mean here?
There you go. Yeah, right there. Steam assigns it a genre, and it's action, and I'm interested in why you didn't cite that. Because that's Steam assigned.
Mostly because it's so far down, and I saw what was at the top, and I just decided, you know, like, I figured the information at the top is going to be the most important.
Okay, but if that's user-defined versus Steam's actual assignment, don't you think that's, like, an important delineation between those two?
Okay, I mean, in hindsight, after a year and a half of this video being up, I will acknowledge that is a mostly semantic problem that I gave in the comments section. I still maintain that this was marketed as an RPG.
But Steam markets it as an action game.
Does Steam do that, or does From Software do that?
Well, my point is that you were citing Steam in your thing, and when From Software markets it as an action RPG, again, the emphasis is on the action. It's a subgenre of action games.
I disagree. I mean, at best, it needs to be just as much of an RPG as it is an action game. Though, when I see the letters RPG, I have certain expectations about the emphasis on a story. And for that matter, I'll freely admit here that this is all personal, purely subjective on my end. It's just that I like me a good story in my games. Have you seen enough of my videos that you can tell that I love to do in-depth story analysis? Clearly I love a good story. I like exploring the main themes of the story. I like exploring how characters develop. So the fact that Dark Souls either doesn't have that or has it in such pitiful little droves that it might as well not even, that it seems to just be there just for flavor more than the focus, obviously that's going to be off-putting for me, and I don't think I am being the least bit unfair for criticizing nearly any game, especially a single-player game, for not having a story. Even if it's not conventional to the genre, even Call of Duty, which I previously brought up, can still have a story in its single-player campaign. Multiplayer, yeah, it would probably be a little bit difficult to tell a coherent story when so many different people are playing at a time. I mean, there's a lot of logistical problems with that. But regardless of the genre, I pointed out how an RPG, and how the most important part of an RPG is its story, just to emphasize just how much I felt Dark Souls had fallen short of the bar. The bar for an RPG is a lot higher than it is for most other genres, but I would like a story in any game that I play, unless it is one where a story just wouldn't work, like a puzzle game. I mean, there's no story in Tetris. There's no in-universe reasoning for why the blocks are falling, or why they disappear when they make a full row, or why you're able to manipulate those blocks with your mind. There's no explanation for in-universe for any of that. There is literally zero story, and there doesn't need to be. But unless it's a type of game where a story just wouldn't work at all, I don't think I'm being the least bit unfair about criticizing any game, Dark Souls or otherwise, for its lack of a story. Dark Souls does not strike me as the kind of game, based on what little I played of it, that a story just wouldn't work at all. So I would like there to be one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, alright, sure. I mean, that's fine. I just, my point was that you called it very definitively an RPG, and it's not, it's an action RPG. And then what you cited, it was interesting to me that you pointed out the RPG thing on Steam when it's first off a user-defined tag and not Steam's official rating. And also the fact that you completely ignored the fact that action was rated on there as well. And the third screenshot that I provided for that was just showcasing, like, if you extend the tags, the fact that it's not even, like, this source isn't even reputable. Because people literally, you were saying this is specifically how the game is marketed. And, I mean, people are marketing the game as, like, I mean, ironically enough, they say story rich, right? Like, you obviously completely disagree with that. You don't think it has a story. They're marketing it as soundtracked, atmospheric. Like, these are,
Right, I have a feeling
the second to top one is education. Like, how reputable are these? Is kind of my point.
Well,
this isn't really a point anymore about the thing, but this would be my criticism to you, which would be like, kind of maybe watch what you're citing, because some people might view this as like either kind of confirmation bias on your part, the fact that you sort of ignored the action and you focused only on the RPG when the person was pointing out the fact that action is more important and the action was rated higher in the tags. So confirmation bias, or like you did know it and it just, that would be kind of like disingenuous then on your part, how you're presenting the information, what you're citing, that kind of thing.
Well, I disagree that I was being unfair by asking Dark Souls to have a good story. And
Right.
as far as I'm concerned, that's entirely subjective, and the only thing we can do is agree to disagree. And it's just because of people who don't think I have the right to not like Dark Souls that don't see. They're the ones who just can't seem to agree to disagree. If people were willing to just accept my opinions and engage in a free exchange of ideas without getting all toxic about that, I would have been one happy camper.
All right, here's the thing. You didn't say in your video that it didn't have a good story. You said it didn't have a story. We're not arguing subjective anymore. That's a definitive statement. It does in fact have a story, which is another thing that I would say is an objective falsehood on your part in the video.
I did say that it had no story, but I did in that video qualify that by citing. I mean, it's not a definitive source. It is more of a blog than anything else, where the guy said that that the game actively tries to hide the story from the player. So I qualified my declaration that it had no story by emphasizing that if the game is so ashamed of its story that it's trying to hide the story from the player and keep this player from seeing the story, then it effectively has no story. I mean,
whoa, no, those are two totally different things. And for starters, this is just some random dude on a blog. Why do we care what he says? The fact that he says that it does everything it can to hide its story from the player, I mean, it really doesn't. It gives you the story right in the tutorial. When you talk to the guy that gives you the healing mechanic, the story is presented right there. That's the story at that point. There's a lot of intricacies to characters in the story, certain people's motivations in the story, certain a lot of the things when people say that Dark Souls' story is so hard, it's a lot of the lore aspect is hard to understand. The lore is super ambiguous. The story itself, yes, there are ambiguous aspects to the story, but as far as you, the player, acting out the story, which is first ring the bells, then get the Lord Vessel, then fight the 4 Great Lords, so then you can kill Gwyn and take over his position, that is literally a story. And it really doesn't do anything to hide it from the player. The fact that it doesn't throw it in your face doesn't mean that it's hiding it. All you have to do is talk to the main characters, which I would feel is something that you would be expected to do in an RPG. No?
Well, at that point, make up your mind. Is it an RPG or is it an action game? I mean, at this point, you're kind of contradicting yourself. But in any event,
I'm saying that you're the one that's suggesting that it is so heavily emphasizing its RPG mechanics. So wouldn't you be expected to talk to the characters if you believed that in order to get information about the story?
Right. And when I went to the Firelink Shrine, the objective the conversation that I had with that guy told me to go and ring a couple of church bells and see what happens. That does not sound like much of a story to me. That sounds like a conceit to get me to send me on my way. It's just it's no more of a story than Princess Peach just got kidnapped, so now Mario runs through this platforming obstacle course to go and save her. This story, for lack of a better term, is not trying to tell a story for its own sake. It's literally just there as the conceit to get the gameplay going. To me,
why does that matter?
Because
it's still a story.
It is a story only in the most bare minimalist sense, and when I say it has no story, I mean at this point you're just taking it. I think at this point now you're the one who is becoming so upset, who is just taking what I say literally and just obsessing more over dictionary definitions than anything else. I mean, I qualified how I felt about the story or lack thereof. I acknowledged that there was some breadcrumbs of story in the game, and I still maintained my declaration that there was no story because frankly, I don't care what Webster says a story is. This story in Dark Souls was so pathetic that it might as well not even be there, and I think I made that perfectly clear. So just because I didn't adhere to your definition of the word story, I think you're the one who's splitting hairs at this point.
Well, my definition is the definition that Google provides, which is story, and I can send this to you if you want, or if you have it. I did send it, but I don't know if it's... I wouldn't actually know where to find it. So here, I can just link it in the Discord thing. Give me one second.
Look, I will admit... let me just say that. You don't even have to send it. I think you sent the screenshot to me when we were setting this up. And look... You can have your definition of a story. That doesn't mean I was just objectively and irrefutably wrong, because I gave my qualification as to what I consider a story to be. Now, if you disagree with that qualification, then we have a difference of opinion.
No, I mean, you said definitively in your video that it didn't have a story, which is a different statement than I don't think the story is good, or I don't think that the story holds up. That is a very, very, very different criticism from saying something outright doesn't have a story. Something not having a story is like describing a game like Tetris, like you were saying earlier. That's different from saying that something doesn't have a story that you like, which is what you're getting at.
Well, it's...
And the way that you presented it in your video, my point is, why did you frame it that it didn't have a story? It just doesn't make any sense to me. You could have easily just said, it doesn't have a story that I like. That's like a very different thing. Because then, here's another thing. You further went in on this in your Super Meat Boy video versus Dark Souls, where you were like refuting this whole point about the game's opening cutscene not being a story or whatever, right?
Right, it was basically just the history of Azeroth.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, when people called you out on this in your comments, for example, that was the argument that you went to in order to refute them. If you can show the, like, the Miramax one, that one.
Miramax? Hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on.
When is the Dark Souls giveaway?
Which one? A Miramax. Here we go.
Yep.
Number 1 or number 2?
There's 2? It should only be 1. Oh, in the thing. My bad. Let me see. Yeah, you can go the first one first.
Okay.
Wait for it to... Yeah, okay. You can ignore the top 3. They're not really relevant.
Okay.
But the guy at the bottom says that the game does in fact have a plot, and that it's objectively wrong to say that you can't say it has a plot, because it literally does. And then he goes on to explain the plot, and then in your response, in number 2, all you do is link the Super Meat Boy video, where all that you do is go in further on the fact that the game's opening cutscene isn't a story, which was never even his argument. So, like, you know, why didn't you address, you know, what you're saying to me here? And also, why would you attack an entirely different point? When people maybe criticize you that you can't take criticism, when they say that about you, this might be an example of what they mean, in the sense that sometimes you kind of ignore what people are saying in order to refute it. You take the dude's thesis statement and you respond to that by linking your video about the whole, the opening cutscene isn't a story, but he literally never even made that argument. So, like, what are you even responding to is kind of, you know what I mean?
Because when I make these follow-up videos,
Mm-hmm.
I do those as a bit of a catch-all to I addressed that I did not feel that the game had a story, and to the extent that he described the story that he described to me, is not the story that I had experienced up until the point that I stopped playing. So, literally all I experienced, the only story I experienced was being told to go ring some church bells. That didn't sound like a story to me. That sounded like the flagpole at the end of a Mario level.
Are you saying that Mario games don't have stories?
Most Mario games, no. They aside from the aforementioned conceit of chasing after a kidnapped princess, no, most of them do not have stories. Now, the Mario RPGs have stories. The Mario RPG games have great stories, and I even made my own video, Super Mario RPG versus Paper Mario, where I examined both games in depth and put them side by side. So yeah, I know full well that most Mario RPGs have stories. The key word there is RPGs.
Okay, so it's funny that you would say that Mario games don't have stories, because the entire thing is like, oh, it's just Mario saving a princess from the bad guy at the end of a level. Your entire point in the Super Meat Boy video, how is Super Meat Boy's plot different?
It's not.
It's literally one for one.
It's not. It's literally just save your girlfriend from the villain, and I'll admit to that.
Yes, that's what a Mario game is.
And
that's literally what a Mario game is. That's
yes.
The story. And you praised Super Meat Boy's story. So if you're saying that Dark Souls is like a Mario game and Mario is exactly the same as what Super Meat Boy does, how is it different?
I said Super Meat Boy was better than Dark Souls. Dark Souls doesn't provide... The fact that I hold any game that is even remotely classified as an RPG to a higher standard of storytelling... Super Meat Boy, like Mario, is only a platformer, and platformers have always been more about their level design and jumping mechanics than about story. So the fact that Dark Souls is classified even partially as an RPG means it needs to have a better story than platformers.
Alright, that's fine, but that wasn't the argument that you made in your video. You argued that it did not have a story. And my point is that you're equating Dark Souls' story to the same thing that a Mario game does, which is the same thing that a Super Meat Boy game does, which you admitted in your video that the Super Meat Boy thing does in fact have a story. So you're admitting that Dark Souls does have a story. That's my point.
Not quite. There is one thing I need to bring up. Okay. The ringing of the church bells, just to provide some abstract, unknown outcome. At least on the first playthrough, I have no idea what ringing the church bells is going to do, and in fact, the guy at the Firelink Shrine just outright admits that it's not a whole lot to go on. I mean, that's just so abstract. It's impossible for me to get invested in that. With Super Meat Boy, it's Meat Boy's girlfriend, Bandage Girl, who needs to be rescued. I know what that is. I know what's at stake. There's the fact that they're a boyfriend-girlfriend couple immediately establishes a bond between those characters that doesn't really... that even if it's developed poorly, it's still better, it's still more of a concrete, tangible thing for me to get invested in than just going and ringing some damn church bells.
Alright, hold on 1 minute. In Dark Souls, when you talk to... he doesn't have like a name in-game, but everyone refers to him as Oscar, the guy who gives you the healing mechanic, yeah? He tells you about the undead prophecy, and he says that when an undead leaves the undead asylum, which is you, so plus there's a cutscene that plays when you leave the asylum that basically like says straight up in your face that like, it doesn't literally explicitly say it, but it is so heavily implied that you, the player character, you left the asylum, you fulfilled that part of the prophecy. So the prophecy is talking about you. It says when you ring the 2 bells, the fate of the undead will be known. So that gives you something to go on, a goal to work towards, which is why you are ringing 2 bells, which is the part of the story. And when you're saying that like it's not enough motivation or something, I mean, why does the game have to immediately tell you everything? Surely you've played games before where like They don't give you all the information at once. You have to play through the story and accomplish the goals in order to understand the bigger picture of the story. I'm sure there are tons of games where, like, you know, you don't really understand what's going on until the end, right? Mystery games, stuff along those lines. Like, it kind of at some points it sounded like you were getting on this thing about, like, you know, the story needs to, like, tell you up front what the point is, and it's like, I don't understand why it can't. Maybe this is honestly, this is kind of irrelevant to my point, which is that the story does give you, like, it gives you the objectives, and there is, like, a reason for you to fulfill that objective, because you know that you're the chosen undead, and in order to understand the story further, you have to fulfill the prophecy. What is the prophecy? Ring the 2 bells.
Okay, so I'm the chosen undead. Why should I give a shit about being the chosen undead?
Why should I give a shit about saving Super Meat Boy's girlfriend?
Because,
like, now we're talking how much the player is invested. That's completely subjective. That's not the point.
And
the
right,
point is that it does in fact give you a story, and it does in fact have motivation to fulfill the story, regardless of whether or not you're actually motivated by it. Because we could look at literally every game's story and say, you know, you could say, well, in Skyrim, I am totally interested. I am totally invested. And for me, because you said in one point in your Dark Souls video...
Can I finish what I was about to say? You agreed not to interrupt me.
Yeah, alright, go ahead.
Why should I give a shit about being the chosen undead? Because what exactly does that entail? Now, you ask, does the game need to spell out everything from the get-go? Hell no! There's plenty... I mean, there's... If everything about the story were spelled out from the beginning, stories wouldn't have plot twists. No. You do not need to spell out everything about the story from the get-go. But you mentioned mysteries, for example. Okay, what's the opening? What is it there that I need to be? What is there to get me invested in? This random person is now lying in a pool of his own blood and he's dead. Okay, let's find the killer. I know what it means for somebody to have been murdered. That is a tangible thing that I know what that is. I know what the stakes are. So, no, I do not need to be given every single thing up front, and I find it preposterous that you think that I would think that, just because I mean, the whole point of being a chosen undead, that means even less to me than ringing the church bells. At least I know what church bells are. What even is a chosen undead? The game is expecting me to just, and it says, and when I get whisked away by that giant bird, it says the prophecy of the undead will become known. Well, in that case, you're basically admitting that the game is actively withholding crucial plot details, crucial inciting information that would be quite useful in getting me invested in the story. Now, the thing about that, and I think we're not getting anywhere on this, but let me just say this one last thing. You might disagree that when I said the game has no story, you might take the definition so literally that you think that I just got it objectively wrong. But here's the thing: even if that were true, and even if what I said was objectively incorrect, I still feel that my audience should have had enough common sense to meet me in the middle and realize, okay, he's just criticizing how little story there is, so when he says there is no story, maybe we should cut him a little slack and accept that maybe he's talking a bit hyperbolic. I mean, okay, yeah, I didn't exactly thoroughly spell check. I mean, when I was writing the script for that Dark Souls retrospective video, I was at a point in my YouTube career where I was cranking out 3 analysis videos a week. I did not have much time to fact-check literally every single solitary sentence that I said, so I would like to think that my viewers would have enough courtesy to meet me in the middle if I made a mostly semantic error. You're saying that my stating that the Dark Souls has literally no story at all is objectively wrong. Well, okay, so what if I were to do the Dark Souls retrospective and I were to call the first bonfire outside of the Undead Asylum, let's say I called it the Firelink Shrink by accident. What does that change about my assessment or analysis of the game? Yes, maybe, I mean, you're obsessing over this one inaccuracy about, if it even is an inaccuracy, about how the lack of a story, my claiming that it's a lack of a story is objectively wrong, but really, do you really not have enough common sense to be able to tell what I was actually criticizing the game for, even if the words that I said were literal in its most literal capacity, might have been wrong? I mean, at this point, you really are just splitting hairs, taking one thing that I said that you consider to be wrong and trying to use that to single-handedly invalidate the entire review, which, as I pointed out in my Good Faith Trolls video, which you say you watched, I completely do not agree that pointing out just a couple of mostly semantic errors can invalidate my criticism. So that is
whoa, I never said it invalidated your criticism. I said it was a mistake that you could admit to.
And I probably would be willing to admit to it if people didn't try to harp on me and obsess and try to act like it did invalidate my criticism.
But I'm not saying it invalidates your criticism, so that's not relevant to our debate right now.
But
I'm not saying your criticism is invalid. I've never once said that. It's not my video. It's not in any of the emails we sent. It's not in any of the comments. I've never said that.
But you are pointing to comments that people have made about me that I have responded to and trying to use that to justify your point. So when they when they try to invalidate my criticism, and then you use those as examples, what am I supposed to think?
When did Miramax say that your criticism was invalid?
I don't recall. I don't remember Miramax. I didn't even read his original comment when you sent the screenshot. But there are thousands. There have just been hundreds of people posting comments talking about how my video is shit. Honestly, they all blend together at this point. You stood out to...
I don't agree with the people that are saying your criticism's invalid, so I don't know why we're bringing this up.
It's because, well, to me, they're all just haters. Haters gonna hate. So, I mean, to me, they're all blurred together. At this point, I've just gotten so tired of responding to the exact same rebukes over and over again that to me they're all just... I welcome them all to post their comments, but whenever I see another comment that is literally just get good, and that's it, that's the whole comment, I just roll my eyes and like, yep, another one of them. I don't even take down their names anymore.
Okay, here's the thing. Okay, here's another point that you made. You say you've responded to this like a million times. I've looked through all your Sir replies. His is one of the few that you actually have responded to that's related to the argument about the story. And the difference between saying that a story is bad and a story literally isn't there, that's kind of a big difference. His is one of the few that you did respond to about the story, and your response was completely irrelevant to the point. Because you were talking about the backstory and the opening cutscene, which is never something that they mentioned. It was not even something that they said. So it's a completely irrelevant point.
At the same time, I also made it clear in the video, not just me linking the Super Meat Boy video, but in the Dark Souls retrospective video itself, I also made it clear that I never made it past the gargoyles. So
why is that an excuse?
Let me finish.
Alright, I'm sorry.
So, when I made it to the gargoyles, So the fact all this story that he's describing for me is story that I hadn't even gotten to yet. So how could I possibly have criticized that if I hadn't even gotten to that point before I stopped playing? I obviously, for him to say, based on the story that I had received up to that point, the story was effectively non-existent.
Can I respond?
Now you can respond.
Okay, first off, why is it an excuse that, well, I didn't get up, I only made it to the gargoyles, so therefore, if I criticize the game for not having a story, for literally not having a story, but it's factually inaccurate, because the story isn't very explicit up until that point, like, you're just flat out wrong, and you're saying it's okay to be flat out wrong. In your quote, you said yourself, you admitted, in-depth analysis of games, like deep dive discussions of games, that's okay then? Because it's just flat out wrong. And more importantly than that, the points that he's bringing up are not, they're not told to you after the gargoyles. You were the chosen undead as told to you by Oscar. You're branded with the curse of the dark sign, which is told to you in the opening cutscene, and you need to escape the prison, ring the 2 bells. That's literally a story that is literally given to you before the gargoyles.
Again, I figured that the audience would have had enough common sense to realize what I was saying, that even and not just harp on literal definitions.
Okay, my point is that it's a big difference when you say that something literally doesn't have something as opposed to something in something is bad. Those are 2 very different statements.
I disagree. I think that's not as nearly as big of a difference as you make it sound.
All right, let's move on, because
yeah.
How strict are you on this 2-hour time limit?
I don't even care if it goes over 2 hours. It can go up to 3 for all I care.
Okay, legit. How about the rats? How about the rats section? Can we talk about that?
You mean those rats that had the ridiculously annoying poison?
Yeah, those ones.
Okay.
A lot of people pointed out this was another, actual inaccuracy that you made, where you pointed out, you said the whole thing, you made a whole spiel about how the rats were a one-hit KO, where you showcased footage of you getting hit 3 times before getting poisoned. So, and people pointed you out on this, and you never responded to it.
If I
You know what I mean?
Okay. Here's the thing, and I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that what you're saying is true and that the rats really do take 3 hits before I get poisoned.
I can show you where in your video, if you'd like.
That will not be necessary. I was about to... Right. Dude, that's 3 times already you've interrupted me despite the rules that you agreed to follow saying you can't do that.
Sorry.
I will give you the benefit of the doubt because, frankly, I just cannot be bothered to go back to that game, review the footage, and relive those torturous, and this time I am being literal here, literal torturous memories of me playing that game and raging. So no, I'm not. I'm just gonna give you the benefit of the doubt that what you're saying is true.
Okay.
The fact that I was so, here's the thing, that even if whether it takes 1 hit, whether it takes 3 hits, the point of that section of the video, the point of that criticism was that the rats are fucking bullshit. They are a bullshit enemy that should not have been that difficult that early in the game. So what if what's next? So I was maybe 2 hits off from how many hits it actually takes for me to get poisoned. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Can you actually address some of the criticisms that actually go to the core of how I feel about the game? I did not respond to any of the rat poison rebuttals, primarily because that would be like responding to... that had the number of hits that it took was no more important to my criticism in that section than the fact that my Let's Play had underperformed. I didn't respond to those rebuttals because you're harping on that mostly semantic inaccuracy, if it even is an inaccuracy, and I cannot be bothered to go back and check. But then, I just didn't feel it was worth my time to respond to that because it was something that I had honestly just glossed over to begin with. So now you can respond.
Okay. Well, first off, it is relevant to the criticism that you were making, because you were saying about how it was you said yourself right now that it's a completely bullshit interaction, but don't you think that there's an importance if whether or not something hits you one time and that means you have to entirely restart as opposed to 3 times? I think that 3 chances to do something correctly is a fair amount for a game to provide a player before, okay, you fucked up enough times, now you have to face the punishment. On top of that, don't you think that it speaks to your ability as a content creator? You said yourself that you want to be an in-depth analysis person, you want to do these retrospectives on videos, you want to take deep dives into them. Like, what does that say about your ability to do that when you make a point in your video making this whole ordeal about how they hit you one time and then it's poison and then you got to go back and do all the jazz, whatever the hell, and you literally have footage in your video disproving your statement? Like, you did actually respond. I have one if you want to look at it. It says the rats. Like, it says something when you make a point about something that you're criticizing, and then your footage is literally disproving you. Like, don't take this as an insult. It's not meant to be, but that says something about your ability as a critic. That calls into question how well you can criticize something. Like, that's such a basic mistake that would be so easy to address. And here's another thing. Every time that we've discussed something now about the story, about these rats, about the action RPG time, you keep saying the whole, if you even are correct. Like, I've provided you concrete evidence that I am correct. I mean, I haven't with the rats, but I did say I can point out the point in your video if you'd like, where you showcase you getting hit 3 times. Like, this is another part where people say Acerthorn has a hard time taking criticism. You're not actually admitting that you're ever in the wrong. You're just avoiding it. You're saying, if I even am correct, I'm not going to bother to go back and check. Why does it matter? I'm an in-depth content reviewer. I'm some deep dive retrospective on video games. But if I'm wrong, whatever. Who cares, right? Who gives a shit? Like, don't you think that says something about your ability to criticize content? Don't you think that says something about how much people should care about any opinion you give on a game ever? Because it just, how well are you at doing that when you get something wrong that you literally have to write the script and then edit the footage and put them together and they're flat out contradicting each other?
Well, here's the thing.
That's not a problem.
Here's the thing. I am human. I admit that I am human, and I am going to make mistakes. So what exactly are you criticizing? Are you criticizing the fact that I am just falling below any reasonable bar for fact-checking, or are you criticizing me for not being perfect?
I'm criticizing you. I'm criticizing you for, one, getting that wrong in the video, because you're misrepresenting the game that you're talking about, and 2, I'm criticizing you at the fact that you seem to have a reluctance to accept the fact that you were in fact wrong. Because I've said now, and you're even saying, you're giving me this benefit of the doubt, that yes, I did actually make that mistake, but you're not actually admitting it to it, because you're saying, if I even did get it wrong. You seem to have a reluctance to admitting when you've made a mistake, and this is why people say that you have a difficult time taking criticism.
Well,
those are the 2 things.
it mostly boils down to whether you think a one hit or 3 hits is a big deal. And okay, yeah, if you think that 3 hits is fair, then go ahead and enjoy Dark Souls with its what you consider to be fair difficulty. The thing is,
okay, sorry, go ahead.
The thing is, now, notice this. This is the response that you say I gave. Notice it's linking them to my Good Faith Trolls video, where I point out that just getting one thing wrong, and this is the only thing that Alex Latella here is criticizing. I'm sure you're going to go down the list and try to point out everything that was wrong with the video, but she was only pointing out one inaccuracy, so I linked her to my video where I explained that I don't believe that one inaccuracy is enough to invalidate the review. So no, is 1 hit or 3 hits? Is the fact that I was 2 hits off, does that make my criticism in that section invalid? Honestly, it mostly just depends on how much you're willing, on how willing you are to forgive this extreme difficulty, which admittedly is something that Dark Souls is known for. Do you say, is 3 hits fair to have to go back and do it again? Honestly, up until that point, I've taken like 6 or 7 or even 10 hits from enemies before I got so low on health that I felt the need to return to the bonfire to restock. And so, yeah, when I suddenly get hit by a poison ailment that pretty much drains 8 of my 10 Estus flasks, yeah, I do feel that's a bit of an unfair spike in difficulty. Especially if it happens so quickly that at least when I'm playing the game, in the moment, it's virtually impossible for me to tell if it was 1 hit or 3, which may be the source of where I made the mistake. It was just, I didn't notice in the ensuing chaos exactly how many hits it took. So yes, I will admit that I'm not going to admit to it. I will concede to the possibility that I got that one fact wrong. But my criticism for that section was that the poison ailment was far too punishing for that early in the game, and for it being so sudden. And the thing is that so many people seem to take these when people are trying to say that my criticism is unfair, they tend to zero in on things that I was never intending to even be the focus in the first place, like the underperforming of the Let's Play, or the fact that I said that the game had no story when, at least in the strictest sense of the words, that might be untrue, when clearly my intention to criticize was that the story was so small that it might as well not even be there. And I figured that enough people would have enough common sense to be able to piece that together. When people obsess over these mostly semantic inaccuracies, yes, I am admittedly going to roll my eyes, because I don't see what the big deal is. And if these people in the comments certainly aren't going out of their way to explain what the big deal is, admittedly, you are at least trying to explain what the big deal is here. Even though I disagree, and now that you're actually trying to explain why it's so important, I would even respectfully disagree. The problem here is that these comments, they come across as, I mean, you mentioned how when I mentioned the underperforming of the Let's Play, it came across as me just being condescending towards my fans. these comments come off as quite condescending to me. They genuinely feel like they're just taking these mostly semantic errors and then just trying to use those to invalidate the whole review. Now you're going way out of your way right now to emphasize that you, at least personally you, are not doing that. But then that's what these comments are coming off of. Let me just switch to this for a minute. One hit from a rat is essentially a KO since you get instantly poisoned. Shows footage of getting poisoned by rats after several continuous hits. This comes off as like, Acerthorn is just such a fucking dipshit here. He can't even count. Yeah, that kind of condescendingness is going to piss me off. Just like how when you say I was being condescending towards the fans about how the underperforming of the Let's Play, that's going to be off-putting. Well, comments like that are off-putting to me.
Can I respond?
Yeah, that I just finished.
Okay. Well, this isn't the only person, first off, that mentioned the rats. This is just the only one that you responded to specifically about the rats, which was also a point that I had brought up. You're saying that it's like only a small semantic thing. I've brought up 3 times now where it's been like inaccuracies, which I think it doesn't matter if it's like super small or anything. It would say so much about you as a critic if you would, when you're willing to accept when you've made a mistake. And this is kind of one of the things that you said to me when you were talking in that whole spiel. Like you said at the one point, I concede to the possibility of you being correct. Again, like, not to be a dick, I literally am correct. I could literally point out the point in your video where this occurs, and you're still not really accepting it, that it actually is a fact. It's an avoidance of taking responsibility for making that mistake. The whole point about the rats, you were saying, is the point about the difficulty. And you were saying, does it even matter if it's a difference between 1 hit or 3 hits? I mean, I think there's a very big difference in whether or not something is unfairly difficult as opposed to fairly difficult if it takes 1 time before you die from getting hit, as opposed to getting 3 times, as opposed to dying after 3 times of getting hit, and you don't even die immediately afterwards. Again, like the poison, I have in my footage the poison, which is kind of context that you left out, the fact that the poison is extremely it builds up so slow. Like, I have footage of me speeding up my gameplay, which again, this is something that a commenter could never showcase, of me going through the entire area with the poison effect. And I mean, yeah, okay, I'm not to suck my own dick, I'm quite good at Dark Souls at this point. Like, I've played a lot of it, so I'm not the same as someone who's never played it. Like, from your perspective, you were doing a blind Let's Play and stuff. But it does showcase that it's not, like, so detrimental to the point that, and this is us disagreeing on the difficulty, so fine, whatever. But I think there's a huge difference in saying something is unfairly difficult if you only get hit once by it and it takes effect, as opposed to 3 times and it takes effect. And we can disagree on that, but again, regardless of whether or not you agree on that point, you're still misrepresenting the game that you're talking about, which is a problem. And, okay, so we were talking about this guy's, or girl's, Alex, ambiguous name, androgynous, in fact, that's a college word, facts. Anyway, they never once say in their response to you that your criticism as a whole is invalid. I mean, yeah, they come off as a little snooty, but that doesn't mean that they think that your entire video is invalid. That would be like me saying, if someone came into one of my videos, I have one on Dark Souls 2, and they find one thing that I made a mistake on, and they make a comment about it, and I'm like, you only commented on one thing? You're acting like that invalidates my entire criticism. I'm not even going to take it seriously anymore. It's like, that's such a weird standard to hold people by. The fact that they only mention one thing, and therefore your assumption is that they think every point that you make is therefore invalid. Like, why would you make that assumption? You're assuming it. You can't know that that was what this person meant.
Well, for starters, that Alex person Yeah, he or she never said that never explicitly stated that the entire criticism was invalid, but there are plenty of other people who do, and in the Good Faith Trolls video, I did provide at least a couple of screenshots of comments on YouTube and Reddit where they said that the entire video came off as straight up disingenuous, but then again, they only ever provide one example. So yeah, and now you mentioned how there were a lot of other people who responded to who commented on the rat thing, and that I never responded to it. Okay, so who says that I need to respond to every comment? And is it required in order for me to take criticism that I have to respond personally to every comment I would like to think that if I quietly let the comment stand and don't delete it, which you wouldn't have seen it if I had, that alone is an indication that I feel that their comment was civil and that we can just respectfully disagree. So, I mean, what exactly? I mentioned to you when we were setting up this conversation that I planned to ask you this. So here's where I'm going to ask it. What exactly does it mean to take criticism? Because you act like I have to affirmatively admit when they did something, when they pointed out an error. And why exactly is it so important that I go out of my way to say, yeah, you are right and I was wrong? What can't we just... Why is it not enough that I just let them say their piece and be done with it? Can you answer that, please?
Sure. As for what it means for, like, taking criticism, I would say it's two parts. I'd say it's acknowledging the criticism, and then I would say it's acting on the criticism. So acknowledgement can be, not all criticism is entirely worthwhile, right? When someone says get good on your Dark Souls thing, I don't agree with that criticism at all. Like, it's not even a criticism, it's just stupid, Like, throw that out. Obviously, that's worthless. They're garbage. Every community has trash people, and of course the Dark Souls community has a couple elitists, and they're going to have that response. So obviously that's not valid criticism, that's not worthwhile. But let's take this Alex person's for example. You don't even, like, when you responded to their criticism, you could argue that is you acknowledging it, but the problem is that when you link your video to the point, you say essentially the same thing that you've said on this stream. You're basically calling him out for saying that your entire criticism is invalid, which is something they never said, and you responded to that when I brought that up by saying, well, a bunch of other people have said it. Well, that's not relevant because this person hasn't said it, and this is the person that you're responding to. And then the other point about the rats that you brought up is, I don't know whether you said this in your the Good Faith Trolls video, because you were using this as an example, and it wasn't his comment, it was one from Reddit, but they said essentially the same thing about the rats. And your response was, I don't know whether you're right or wrong, and I can't be bothered to check. That's not an acknowledgement of, like, whether or not you're actually right or wrong in the situation. And in something like this, when when this is just such a basic thing that you got wrong, and you're telling your fans, you're telling your audience, you're marketing these videos as in-depth analyses, kind of, stuff like that, don't you... My response to why is it important, I think that was like the second part of your question, why is it important that I acknowledge, and even if it's just these minor things, because it speaks to you as a creator. When you as a critic are able to take criticism and acknowledge, hey guys, I fucked this up, I made a mistake, like I had some information incorrect, maybe throw it in a pinned comment. I'm not saying redo your entire video, I'm not saying suck Dark Souls dick from now on or anything like that. I'm just saying that, like, when your response to these kind of situations is this link, and then the link is a video and it's a super long video and you only address in a very small portion of the video. And the thing is like your portion of the video where you talk about it isn't even responding to their actual literal point. Like, it just comes across as not being able to take criticism, again, which is what people have levied against you in the past. It would say so much more about your character. So part of it is acknowledging, which means not just saying an ambiguous, you might be right, you might be wrong, I don't know, I have the footage, but I won't bother checking. It's saying, yes, I was wrong, or no, I'm not wrong, and then from there, you act on it. So if you are wrong, maybe throw it in a pinned comment and be like, hey guys, I made a mistake. Or if it's not wrong, obviously you don't have to address it. And not all criticism is the same, because if someone says like, hey bro, you have some audio issues, you know, maybe you don't have to address it in this particular video, because that's like a vague statement that applies to maybe all your videos. So then you can be like, okay, I'll just apply that in future videos. In future videos, I'll fix my audio, I'll make it better somehow, and then that'll be addressing it, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the literal video itself. But when we're talking about an inaccuracy about a game that you're reviewing, like, yeah, part of addressing that would be like saying to the person, hey, I got this wrong, and then, like, maybe you don't even have to acknowledge it to them. Maybe your response doesn't have to be to them. It would just be acknowledging it and be like, oh yeah, I did get that wrong, and then throwing it in a pinned comment or something. The reason I brought up that other people have made this criticism and you haven't responded to them, no, I don't expect you to respond to every single person that brings up a criticism against you. But the point is that this is the only time I was able to find that you even responded to this point about the rats. Several people have brought it up, and your response, it's a non-response. You attack them for something entirely different. You say, you're saying my entire criticism is invalid, which is not a point they ever made. And then your point about the rats is that, I don't know if I was wrong, I'm not going to acknowledge it, I'm not going to admit that I was right or wrong. Who fucking cares? I'm an in-depth analysis reviewer, but if I get information wrong in my reviews, it's not important. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm getting at?
Barely. But here's the thing. You also said that it was important for me to act on that criticism. Now, I actually notified you of my intention to bring this up as well. Hang on. Let me find this tab again. Here we go. As you can see, my Dark Souls retrospective video is the third most popular video on the channel, currently rocking approximately, and this could just be rounding up from 14,500 and or greater, but it's currently rocking approximately 15,000 views on a 1.75k subscribers channel. This is the video that you said that where the bulk of these criticisms are coming from. By contrast, let's keep scrolling down until we find a Final Fantasy retrospective video and see what that looks like. Here, Final Fantasy VIII retrospective, measly 913 views. Mm-hmm. And yet, so one of the most common criticisms I get about Dark Souls is, and bear in mind that Final Fantasy VIII, that was the most views that any Final Fantasy retrospective video on my channel has gotten so far. So the most common criticism I get about Dark Souls, my Dark Souls review, is that I can't really truly review the game until I finished it. And yet, when I actually take that criticism and I actually finish game, and every Final Fantasy retrospective I've done so far is one that I have finished the game first. Right. And the game and those videos get a pittance of the views that the controversy raising Dark Souls retrospective video gets. That has been my reward for acting on the criticism, to take that criticism and incorporate it into my future works. That is what I have gotten. I've gotten less views, less ad revenue, fewer subscribers. So basically, what you're really saying here is, if I want to be a better content creator, I need to become a worse content creator. Okay, so So should I when I'm taking criticism? What do you expect me to do when I do take that criticism and it blows up in my face? So,
Can I respond?
yes, you can respond.
Okay. What's the difference between your Dark Souls retrospective and your Final Fantasy VIII retrospective? Let's assume that both games... Final Fantasy VIII, I don't play Final Fantasy games. Would you say that it's a pretty well-liked game?
It's Final Fantasy. Even if your grandparents have never played a video game in their lives, they've heard of Final Fantasy. It is one of the most famous and most widely popular video game franchises in the world. It's up there with Mario or Call of Duty.
There's a motorcycle out.
That's fine.
All right, yeah. Here's my point. When you made your Final Fantasy VIII video, you just titled it Final Fantasy VIII Retrospective. So that's a beloved game, but surely there are a million retrospectives on Final Fantasy games. And yours is, your title at least, like, let's be honest, it's very, it's neutral. It's extremely neutral. Compare that to your Dark Souls video, where you take a widely beloved game. Dark Souls, look at the reviews on Steam. Very positive, like literally 27K, I think. It's a beloved game. It's a huge game. Some people are saying that it's one of the most influential games of the previous decade. It's so influential, it spawned its own genre of games. People call them Souls-like, which is a tag referred to on Steam, right? The user-rated tags and whatever. Like, people acknowledge that that's a descriptor for games now. So you take that and then you say that the game sucks, and of course that's going to grab a ton of people's attention. Like, it's clickbait. Of course it's clickbait. It's the same as like back in 2008 when people on YouTube would throw some fat titties in a thumbnail and it got a bunch of views. Like, I was a kid, I liked tits, I fucking watched that shit. But like, here's the thing. That's why the video is so popular, for starters, because it's hugely clickbait compared to like your other retrospectives, which are very neutral in their approach. But here's another thing. I know you don't publish this information. You don't have to admit it right now. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking you to think about it. How many likes versus dislikes did that video get? When you say that, well, I look at this and it got so many views and this is the way I think I ought to grow my channel, how many subscribers do you think you actually made off of that video? I would say probably none, because most of the people were saying that this review is garbage. They were saying that this review is not very good. It doesn't make very good points. So if your only metric that you're looking at is based off views, then sure, go ahead and make all the over-the-top controversial content that you want. But I feel, maybe I'm wrong, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I feel like you want your opinion as a reviewer to be respected. I feel like you want to put out content that people are going to actually respect, as opposed to a mass amount of people watching just so that they can shit on you and make fun of you and, be dicks in your comment sections. So, like, that is why I would say that this is not a successful formula for going forward, because even if you get popular off of it, what's that popularity coming, like, what's the price it comes at? The fact that everyone that is tuned into you hates your opinion, thinks your opinion's garbage, only does it to clown on you. Like, if that's how you want to grow your channel, fair enough, bro, but the fact that you market yourself as this in-depth reviewer and you like to do retrospectives on games, you like to do deep dive analysis stuff, don't you want your stuff to be taken seriously? The Dark Souls video is very clearly not taken seriously, and if this is the formula that you think is going to make you a huge success on YouTube, maybe it'll get you views. Like, maybe it will, bro. Honestly, I don't know, but I don't feel like that's the path you want to go down. That's what I would say.
Okay. If you've been watching the stream for the past minute while you were saying that, you might have noticed my smug shit-eating grin, which indicates, yeah, I know exactly how I'm going to respond to this.
I wasn't. I was looking at my cabinet, but go on.
Okay. This right here is the analytics for my Dark Souls video. You can see the thumbnail right here. Let me scroll down just a bit. 76.4% of people found my video, of all the people who actually viewed the video, of course, more than 3/4 of my views came from people actively searching for the video. Now, I know what you're thinking. They were searching for Dark Souls, or maybe just a Dark Souls analysis, and they saw your video, and because it was clickbaity, then obviously they clicked on your video, but that doesn't mean it was ethical. It was just like those titty thumbnails. Mm-hmm. Actually, no. Let's scroll just a bit down. These are the 5 most common searches that people were making to actually find my video. Notice 3 of these 5 search terms were Dark Souls sucks, Dark Souls is bad, and Dark Souls overrated. So, you say that people are only coming onto my Dark Souls video just to shit on my opinion? Quite the opposite, in fact. I am tapping into an underrepresented demographic. There are plenty of people out there who do not like Dark Souls either, and because all of YouTube is overwhelmingly comprised of videos that just suck Dark Souls dick, my video is basically an oasis to them, because I am expressing opinions that they feel that don't really get addressed by the mainstream. So no, you say that my Dark Souls video's title is just super clickbaity, and that's the only reason it has the views it has? Not really. My video is getting views from people who are literally coming to hear me crap on Dark Souls. They're not searching for Dark Souls like how you recall seeing the Dark Souls, my video in your suggested feed. You love Dark Souls, but then you were so taken aback by the fact that I didn't like Dark Souls that the overwhelming majority of people are not coming to my video for the reasons you speculate. They're literally coming for the complete opposite.
Can I ask a question?
You can ask.
If that's the case, then what's the like to dislike ratio, and how do you explain how many comments are negative? Like, even if you're correct in this, and it's not people, even if it's people that agree with your opinion, then how do you explain how many people are against it?
Because, I mean, of course people are going to be against it. This game is hugely popular. But that's
you said the majority of people that are looking for the video already agree with your opinion. So what does that say about your retrospective then?
What do you mean? I'm not sure I understand the question.
You said that the top searches and stuff was like Dark Souls sucks, Dark Souls is bad, Dark Souls is overrated. You're saying they already agree with your opinion that Dark Souls is bad, right? And you're saying they're looking for a safe haven to express that. But when you look, like, if that's the case, then how do you... Because now you're flip-flopping back and forth. You're saying, well, the majority of people that looked for the video are people that are purely in support of my point. But then you look at how many people completely disagree with your point in the comments. And I know that you don't give away your analytics on likes versus dislikes, but I mean, personally, I have to say, I have to imagine that the dislikes are heavily biased as opposed to the likes. So, I mean, if that's untrue, then that's fine. But like, how what's your response to that then?
I don't know what comments you've been reading. I think you've mostly been prioritizing comments that I have personally responded to, but I do know for a fact that I get quite a lot of comments explaining that they actually liked the video, not just respectfully disagreeing with my opinion, though there have been plenty of comments to that effect as well, but also plenty of people who have admitted that, yeah, this game is way overrated. I haven't personally responded to those comments because there's really nothing to talk about. Yay, Dark Souls sucks. I agree. Great. I don't really respond to those. I mostly just click the heart icon and put my channel's icon under the comment to show that I appreciate the comment and basically acknowledging that I read it. But yeah, you, in preparation for this discussion, I think you were focusing on not just on the comments that I had already responded to, and more importantly, the comments that you were planning on using in this discussion. But since I didn't really respond to the comments that were just unequivocally behind what I was saying, you probably just glossed over them and didn't notice them. But I know from personal experience that they are there. And now, as far as the like to dislike ratio is concerned, I've already made a video. And now you didn't. You didn't acknowledge that you had watched this video, but I did make a video explaining in detail. It's 10 minutes long, and I explain in detail why I don't show that. So I'm not going to comment on that in this discussion because I have come to the decision that like to dislikes are categorically useless. So I do not see that as in any way, shape, or form irrelevant to this discussion. And if you want to know why I feel they're useless, go watch the video about why I don't show my videos' likes and dislikes.
Am I good?
You are good.
Okay. I'm not criticizing whether or not you show them. I don't mind that you don't show them. I'm just asking you to reflect on what the ratio is, because personally I would very much disagree that they're useless. I understand that like it's all just interaction with your channel, so like in total, yeah, like, you know, if a video gets 1 billion dislikes as opposed to a video that gets 100 likes, like the billion dislikes one is like there's way more interaction, so YouTube's gonna like skyrocket that one, you know what I mean? But my point is that I think that people are definitely sharing like how they feel about the video. So I'm just asking you to reflect on that personally. I don't need to know it. But the point about the comments, like, yes, I was only screen capping comments in which you responded, but that was only because you were making a big deal about me responding to your Sir replies. So that's why I've only shown those. I'm not saying that you haven't gotten comments that do say that they dislike Dark Souls. I've seen them. I know that people have like said that on your channel, but there's also a myriad of comments that I have not cited that you didn't respond to at all that are very much in disagreement with your point. So it's not like I'm just, you know, ignoring the ones that are supporting you, because there's a ton that don't support you too. And I would have to say that after looking through your comment section more than once, I think that the dislikes, the people that disagree, relatively heavily outweighs the people that do agree.
So you're saying that the easiest way to grow on YouTube and to become successful is to just abandon my own true feelings about the game and just regurgitate the consensus opinion.
Hold on, can I respond?
Yes, you can respond. I was asking you a question.
Alright, sometimes you further elaborate. I don't want to be rude. So if I ask, please don't take it as me trying to interrupt. I'm just... Okay. My point is that if you want people to respect your opinion on as a content reviewer, as a critic, stuff like that, then you should be putting out content that has good criticism. You know what I mean? Like when all these people are pointing out all these factual inaccuracies in your videos, and then there's a bunch of people that are also like, look, Acerthorn, we can agree to disagree, but you didn't substantiate this point, like, at all. Here's the thing. I would never say that your criticisms are invalid, because that seems to be a thing that you make a big deal out of. Like, the whole idea, my criticisms can never be invalidated. I don't disagree. But one of the points that I make in my video is I say anyone can have, like, an opinion on something, right? The joke that I made in my video was I can put out a video titled, like, not Dark Souls 2, what did I say? Fucking, like, Barbie's Bukake Dreamhouse 2 for the PS2 or something. And I said, I can say it's the greatest game on the PS2. I can give a full-blown review on it, knowing nothing, literally nothing except for the title. But if I'm marketing my videos as being like in-depth analysis and retrospective stuff like that, and people come on and they're like, wow, this guy's like giving a whole review saying it's better than frickin' like the God of War games and Shadow of the Colossus, all that stuff, and his entire basis for his point is off of literally just the title. Like, when you market yourself this way and your points are so subjective to the point that they basically only apply to you, you know, people aren't going to take your criticisms seriously, and yeah, you're not going to grow for that reason. Like, again, with the Dark Souls thing, it's like, I understand that it got a bunch of views, but a bunch of people seem to very, very much disagree with your points in the video. And if they see that you're trying to become a big reviewer, a big critic on YouTube, why would they subscribe to you? Why would they bother keeping up with you if, like, all of your videos are to the same standard that this one was? No one would. They'd go, oh, well, he didn't substantiate anything in that video, and a bunch of stuff he just got factually incorrect, so he was misrepresenting the game. And we haven't gotten to some of your arguments yet that I kind of want to point out one in particular, but like, I felt as though it came off as very, very much disingenuous. It seems as though you have a hard time accurately representing a game that you have a bias against. You very clearly have a bias against Dark Souls, and it very much came across in your video. So, like, yeah, it got a lot of views, but is this the way to grow your channel? Personally, I'm going to say no. Not if you want to be a respected critic. And part of bringing that back, even the people, even me, who completely, absolutely fucking disagrees with your video on Dark Souls, you would become so much more respectable of a person in my eyes if you would just admit to some of the things that you got wrong. If you would just be like, yeah, I actually did get that wrong, I admit it, whatever, I'll work on it in the future, it's not a big deal. You know what I mean? That's my point. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, a lot of the stuff that here's the thing, you haven't really watched a whole lot of the videos of my other retrospective videos. You when we were setting up this discussion, you literally only sent one of my first impressions videos, when we haven't even gotten to that one yet. But yeah, so you haven't even watched any of my other retrospective videos, so how would you know if I've actually taken that advice to heart? The only piece of advice you know that I've actually acted on is finishing the game before I review it, and that ends up blowing up in my face, that ends up backfiring. But every other criticism that I have received, how do you know I haven't taken that to heart in future videos, huh? If you haven't watched them.
Well, I can tell you that based off of your Dark Souls videos, a lot of the criticisms are specific entirely to Dark Souls. So, like, you know, it'd be one thing if you just never addressed them, which would still be, like, questionable to me, the fact that you're a critic and you're not, like, acknowledging when people are saying that you get something wrong. You're not, like, refuting it accurately. But you do respond to some of these people. You responded to the dude about the rats. You'll respond to some people about the story. And the problem is that your responses don't actually answer their points. Your thing about the rats, you never address it. Some people bring up the story. The Miramax dude brings up a thing about the story. You never actually address his point. Some other guy, if you want to look at it, the 4% one, if you want to look at that one, the 4% argument.
DM it to me on Discord. Or is it a screenshot on the comments?
Yeah, it's a screenshot, but I can still give it to you on Discord if you want.
Just a minute. Okay, I've got the comments pulled up now. Which one is it?
The 4% one.
For these are in alphabetical order, right? Okay, the 4%. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, the 4% argument.
Okay. There is a
Can you go to 2 first, actually?
Okay.
Sorry.
Don't know why you didn't just make this
one.
I
should have.
Okay.
Oh, because I couldn't fit the full thing in my video. Yeah, so, let me pull it up for a minute. Just looking at the middle one for, the middle point where you say, but you only got about 4% into the game. You go on this whole response about, I can tell if the game isn't fun from the 6+ hours I played it. Then I can already tell I'm not going to like the game. Tell me, does that make the game substantially more fun later on? Blah, blah, blah. Your entire thing here is responding to whether or not the game is fun. And if you go to the first one, the number 1 thing, the other screenshot, the highlighted section is the context for the point that he was making about the 4% thing, which is he's saying that this is a criticism of your point about the story, like, and then you respond with but you only got 4% into the game. You're taking that sentence out of its context and then responding to it, and it's not even relevant. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to read everything right now just to try to familiarize myself here.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Don't want to get... Honestly, I don't even personally remember responding to this, so I'm only going off the screenshots here. And the basically my best guess, and bear in mind this is only just a guess, is that his fan is that, like for example at the top here it said the fans lied to me, the fans are the reason for my failing to complete the game, etc. I did not do that constantly. He really comes off as quite condescending. It was saying that, I mean, accusing me of constantly saying this when I literally didn't do that. So honestly, this my best guess here, and I don't even remember this. I mean, I'm not saying I didn't do this because clearly I did. I mean, my comment icon and the name Acerthorn is right here, so clearly that must have been me. But I'm just trying to speculate as to what I probably felt at the time, and this is just speculation. Is that he just came across as one of those good faith trolls, the kind of people who think they're giving legitimate advice, but really they just come off as condescending and snootish. So that pretty much killed my willingness to read his comment cover to cover. So I probably took it out of context, mostly because he had pissed me off to the point that I just didn't care. Can you understand that I stopped, that I didn't take him seriously because honestly I just grown so weary of that I stopped giving a damn? Does that make sense?
Look, I can understand what you're saying right now. I can understand where you're coming from, but how does it look when someone makes a criticism and like this entire point is about the story, and you take something out of context in order to respond to it with something that's not even relevant, that's not addressing the criticism? And it would be one thing if this was the only case, but you did it in the Miramax comment as well, where he was bringing up the story and you responded to something completely separate. It's in the case with the dude who brought up the rats thing, where the thesis of that video, the much larger point in that video that was being made was the whole, you respond to one thing and then you say that invalidates my entire criticism. Well, that person never said that your entire criticism was invalid, and it doesn't matter if other people said it before him because he doesn't speak for those people and they don't speak for him. So it's like it'd be one thing if maybe this was a one-off, but I've seen it multiple times about multiple points in this one video. So
well,
that's my point.
The thing is that after I see these comments dozens of times, even hundreds of times, with only minor variations in between, as I said earlier, after a while they all start to blur together. And does that mean that sometimes that individual commenters get treated unfairly? I suppose so. I mean, at some point I just gotta stop giving a damn just for my own sanity, so I only casually gloss over each and every comment. I mean, at this point, eventually, they might come in, months later and point out a new criticism, but unless it just is obviously new, then my brain, which has just had it up to here with the same old bullshit, my brain's probably not going to pick up on the fact that it's a new comment unless it is just so clearly new. Like, have you ever read a document that you have read many times before, and then years later you realize there was a minor spelling error that you never noticed until now? I mean, yeah, the more subtle a difference is, the less likely I am to consciously notice it, especially on the first try. If they want to bring up something truly new, I'm not saying I'm not saying it's their fault that I didn't notice that it wasn't different. I'm just saying that that's just how the human brain works. I just grow so weary that eventually I'm not going to notice it. And yes, I will admit that that is a problem, and I'll admit that that is a fault. And it's a fault that I have simply by being human, though. And I think to a certain degree it would apply to all reviewers on YouTube, or IGN, or GameSpot, or Twitch, or anywhere. And I disagree. And so I feel I'm being unfairly treated that you're expecting me to be above such human imperfections. So that is my response. Would you like to weigh in now?
Yeah. Well, it'd be one thing, you were talking about how, you see this over and over and over again, and at a point they all blend together. It's very interesting to me that, I mean, again, that folder that I sent you is like pretty much every time that someone has said a criticism of your game where your retrospective, where you've responded. So it's interesting that even if that is the case, that you would respond to only like this small amount of people and these things would still be happening. It'd be one thing if it was like millions of responses, like, you were responding to like every single person, but that's not really the case. And the other thing that I would point out is the fact that this dude's comment is over a year old, which is the same time that your video first came out. Like, we can go back through the video, I'm still seeing them, 1 month ago, 2 weeks ago, 7 months ago, stuff like that. Like, this is I'm trying to scroll down to the bottom of your comment section, sorted by new, to see where exactly he was. But the fact that he was a year ago tells me that this is like one of the first criticisms that you would have seen. You know what I mean?
I should point out, I mentioned earlier that you wouldn't see the comments that I deleted for obvious reasons. And I do delete comments from people who eventually just evolve into toxic, vile, cuss-spewing trolls. So, is there the possibility that the comments that I'm thinking of might be a lot more massive than just the ones that you're currently seeing?
I'm sorry, is that rhetorical, or?
Like, are the comments that you're reading right now, are they the only ones that have ever existed? Because I can distinctly remember these comments being quite massive, though I do recall a couple of times on this video in particular that I went on a comment deleting purge because I just cleansed the bile out from the comment section and kept those that were relatively civil. So yeah, there's slightly more than 1,000 comments on the video at the moment, but if we take into account all the comments that were ever posted on that video, including my own responses to them, there would probably have been several thousand. I mean, so you can't see the comments anymore because I deleted most of them because they were exceptionally toxic and vulgar, but I do recall these troll comments being quite numerous. Just because you can't see them doesn't mean that you're refuting my point. And I'm not saying you're just fucking wrong. I'm not saying you're lying to me, because I did, because obviously you wouldn't see the comments because I deleted them. So yeah, you're saying that it's not nearly these problem doesn't seem to be nearly as massive as I make it out to be. Well, yeah, I mean, the grass isn't so tall now because I've mowed the lawn.
All right, I mean, my point was just, currently on your video, it's the 14th comment from the absolute bottom, which is sorted newest to oldest. So it's like the 14th newest one. And I recognize that obviously, you have admitted, well, not admitted. You've said that, you've dealt with a lot of trolls and people that are just, bullshitting, being dicks, and obviously those people get deleted. But, like, this person very clearly isn't being it, and the fact that he's still on your, in your comment section is proof to that, because otherwise he would have been deleted, right? You said that earlier, something that if they're still there, you acknowledge that, they're nice enough that it's not an issue where they can stay in your comment section. And, it's just like, if you're gonna do such a, like, no offense, man, but if you're gonna do such a poor job of responding to his points, why bother responding in the first place? Why? I get it, the whole, like, after you see it a million times, they blur together, but this is another thing where it just, like, it really calls into question because you're kind of ripping his point out of context and then attacking it for something entirely different. And, okay, maybe it was a mistake, but, like, that it doesn't look good for you, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, okay, I will concede that you might have a, that I could do better, though unless you're a therapist, I don't see how you could provide me with a plan on how to actually work on that, though I will admit that sometimes I tend to overreact because, like I said, the comments blur together. Okay, so you wanted me to admit that I was wrong? How's that?
All right, well, that's a step forward.
Yeah.
That's GG.
Look, I mean, hindsight is 20/20. When I'm responding to those comments in the moment, they do tend to all blur together. When I go back months later and purge the channel of toxic and vulgar bullshit, then yeah, I can look at that comment months removed from how I originally felt about it and realize that it's not nearly as vulgar as maybe my response at the time would suggest, and so I don't delete the comment. It's just that at the same time, while it wasn't that guy's fault that his comment blurred with all the others, it's not his fault, but I don't see how it's my fault either that I just had enough of the same bullshit. I mean, it's just like when I said I wasn't going to watch the rest of your response video. Why? Because I've done that song and dance so many times. I'm sick and tired of it. And I would like for the comments to actually, I would like for the discussion to actually, advance. Which is why I was so adamant about you providing replies to my comments, to my arguments, rather than just regurgitating the exact same stuff. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Can I respond?
Of course.
But my point is just that, like, with these replies, my point is that the criticisms that I brought up in my video and the criticisms that these people levy against you, I understand that you've seen it a lot, and maybe a lot of people are being super fucking toxic and they're total cunts and you have to get rid of them, you have to take them out of the comment section, all that kind of stuff. That's totally fine. But my point is that you're making this huge deal about how I've responded to this already, I've dealt with this already, I've done it already. And my point is that these responses are not actual responses. Your response to the thing about the rats, that's a non-response. Your response to the thing about the story, that's a non-response. Your response in this instance about the story, the 4% thing, it's ripped out of context. it's a non-response. So, if it's not intentional, that's totally fine. I'm not going to try and drag you over the coals for it. My point is just that this is something where it's like maybe, with my video, you made this assumption about all of my points before going into it, and you were saying, I've already responded to this. Well, maybe you haven't actually responded to it as you think that you have. Maybe you haven't actually got, like, what's the word? Maybe you haven't actually disproven them to the extent that you think you did, and maybe that's the mindset that you should have going forward when you see something like my video where I'm making a criticism and it wasn't supposed to come off as an attack, and I wasn't trying to be rude, I wasn't trying to be a dick. That was just, yeah, that's kind of my point. And the other thing about this context thing is I have a point. We can go to this next, maybe. Your point about the boulder, like, sometimes there are instances where you will rip the context out of a point that you're making in a video in order to make a statement about whatever it is that you're reviewing. And that also is, like, in the same sense that this is speaking to your ability to kind of take criticism, it also speaks to your ability to give criticism.
Okay, can you elaborate a bit as to how the boulder fits into that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Okay. If you want to pull up, if you can look at boulder is unfair, that one, not the question mark one, just the boulder is unfair. It's at the top.
Okay, this is a comment, not the video?
No, I'm going to get to the video in a minute, but I'd like to look at the comment first.
Okay.
Right, okay, so the thing that No, not that one, the other one. Sorry.
There is no other one. Boulder and DS is...
Send it?
Wait, here we go.
That one. It says boulder is unfair.
Okay.
Okay, so you respond to this guy, and let me just say, his verbal skills could... his comment's really hard to read. But his point is that the boulder, you didn't die from it, that kind of stuff. And the whole point, the context for this was, like, you were talking about the boulder in your video, and you were saying... This was immediately after your first point about the bug in Dark Souls, and you were making this, you were asserting that Dark Souls has unfair difficulty. And in your video, you were citing the example with the boulder, and, you were saying, it hit me in point for whatever amount of seconds, like, how was I supposed to dodge that? That's completely unfair. And then this person says that, and then your response to them is, you didn't die from the boulder, so it's still a bullshit obstacle. So this is the one of two times I've seen you respond to this situation. And the point in my video that I made that far surpasses what this person's point is that you didn't bring in the additional context to the situation with the boulder, which is that the boulder is a tutorial interaction in order to introduce the player to the healing mechanic. So it's not unfair that it deals damage to you, because it's intentional game design so that they can give you the Estus flask, they can teach you, okay, here's how it gives you an excuse to apply it to your hotbar, it gives you an excuse to use it, so that way you can see, this is the Estus flask, this is how fast it works, this is how many charges I have, this is how much it heals. All of that is very pertinent information, because in a few seconds you're about to fight the Asylum Demon, which is the first boss in the game, and, the Asylum Demon can be extremely difficult for new players, so it's very important that the player has an excuse to use the healing mechanic. So in this instance, you say, so it's still a bullshit obstacle. So my counter to that is that you were leaving out the context, and now if you want to go to the other one that you were talking about, the other folder where it says boulder is unfair question mark, and bring up that comment. Right. This person basically makes the same claim that the same points that I'm making. Boulder leads you to Oscar, he gives you the healing item, then you can heal the damage. It was supposed to show you how to heal damage, and I brought in even more context. I showcased in my video how the run back to the area with the boulder is extremely short with basically no enemies in the way, and you have practically no souls, aka experience, in that point in the game. So even if you somehow did die from it, which is extremely, extremely unlikely, the run back is like basically nothing. You lose basically nothing, and it gives you an opportunity immediately afterwards to heal the damage. So it's not at all an example of unfair difficulty. And the thing about how you present the point, by taking out the context, this kind of goes back to the same thing that I was pointing out with Steam's homepage about like where you circled RPG and left out action, which was rated higher. It's like this kind of suggests one of two things, which is either a case of confirmation bias on your point, where you have an idea about a game and then you go into the game and then you look for things that support that, and you know, like, even if there's contradictory evidence immediately afterwards, you don't see it because of the confirmation bias, and or it's you knowing about the context and you purposefully leave it out, which would mean that you're being disingenuous with your points, which would mean you're intentionally misrepresenting the game, which is obviously not something you want to be criticized for as a content creator if you ever want to be taken seriously. And the problem is that when you respond to this guy, you say 11:49 to 12:48 of this video is supposed to show you how to give, of this video is how a game is supposed to give you scripted damage in order to teach you how to deal with yourself. And you link to the video, which is the Super Mario RPG thing where Toad bumps into you and you take damage, and then it shows you how to heal. And then you say Dark Souls does it the wrong way. It gives you an impossible to avoid obstacle and just tells you to deal with it. For starters, the Dark Souls interaction and the Toad interaction, they're like 1 for 1. Like, first off, you say it gives you an impossible to avoid obstacle. The ironic part is that Dark Souls, the boulder is actually entirely possible to avoid, whereas Toad is actually literally not possible to avoid. But the bigger point that I'm trying to make here is you acknowledge in this comment that you do in fact know that this is a tutorial setup to teach the player how to heal damage. You acknowledge that, and you leave that out of the video. So when I see that as someone who understands Dark Souls, and I see your response to this comment, that implies so much heavier that Acerthorn is making a disingenuous argument as opposed to just a case of confirmation bias, which is something that anyone can do. And the problem with that is if that's what this points to, then why should I believe it's the opposite in any other instance where it comes up? It really fucking damages your reputation if it looks like you're being disingenuous to bash on a game that you admittedly have a bias against. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, first, I think I see what you're saying, but the thing about the confirmation bias is I don't see how that's even literally possible. I had no opinion of the game until I started playing it. I didn't have fun playing it, and I formulated my negative opinion about the game based on the lack of fun I had playing the game, not before then. So, hang on.
Sorry. All right, sorry.
He said that. So you say it's just. It reeks of confirmation bias? Confirmation bias is literally impossible since I didn't even have an opinion on the game until I started playing it. I don't see how that... and I don't see why I should have to individually address a flaw in my reviewing when that flaw is literally impossible. So, and then... and then somebody points out that my childhood game, the Super Mario RPG, and how the Dark Souls boulder is practically a 1-to-1. Let me pull this up again. You can see that when they point that out, I don't I don't reply to the comments to the Arthur Morgan, the guy T. I don't reply to those comments again, but at the same time I don't delete them either for being trolls. So I would like to think that most people would see that as just me quietly, admittedly quietly, but still acknowledging nonetheless that they might have a point. So basically, so far your biggest criticism here isn't so much my inability to take criticism, but the fact that your biggest problem so far seems to be that I don't go out of my way, take additional time out of my day to affirmatively acknowledge that they are right. I mean, yeah, I now know, as of the time of this recording, as of the time of this streaming, I now know that the boulder that the boulder was more of a tutorial than anything else. By the time I learned that, however, I had already made the Dark Souls video, so you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. That criticism is out there now. I have seriously been considering making a video for my YouTube channel, top 10 times Acerthorn got it wrong, and it would be across many of my videos, not just the Dark Souls retrospective. But, I haven't gotten around to making that video yet, mostly because I'm trying to, anytime I get a spare moment, I'm trying to focus on the Final Fantasy X retrospective, but I keep getting sidetracked with different stuff that requires my more immediate attention.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seriously considered doing a time when making a video where I basically, like you've seen the Nostalgia Critic's top 11 Nostalgia Critic fuck-up videos, I've seriously considered making one of those. But, I mean, at this point, you can't, I've allowed this criticism, this correction, to remain in the comment section. Why should I have to acknowledge the correction when the correction is already in the comment section, publicly visible? Why doesn't that stand as the correction? So that is my response to that. Yes, you can respond.
Okay. All right. Well, first off, you're questioning how it could be confirmation bias. Let me explain this. You are making a retrospective on a video game that you've already done a Let's Play on. That's how it's confirmation bias. You played through Dark Souls to whatever extent that you played through it, wherever you ended up quitting. That's fine. You knew that you didn't like Dark Souls while you were playing it. I mean, hell, that's half the reason why you quit. Well, maybe not half, but you know what I mean. Like, that's partially why you quit. So, you already knew that you were upset at the game, and maybe because, like, you don't play these games very often, so you're not very good at them or whatever, maybe you were like, or the fact that you acknowledged straight up in the video that, Dark Souls is a really hard game, and everyone says this is one of the things you make when you first bring up the unfair difficulty. You talk about how people, say a lot of the time things like, Dark Souls is it's difficult, but it's always fair. It never bullshits you. It never screws you over. And so in your head, what's a great way to criticize Dark Souls? Well, let's take this thing that everyone respects the game for and throw it on its head and try and disprove that. And then you would look back through your footage and you'd be like, oh, well, where is this not true? Where is this not true? Oh, here's a boulder. How was I supposed to avoid that, That's, and then you see that and then you throw it into your video and you don't take into account the context. And then, so that's how it could be confirmation bias is my point. And then on top of that, I recognize that you left the comment up, but it's questionable that you wouldn't respond to it. I mean, I don't even know what they responded afterwards. But it's interesting that you wouldn't admit to the idea, to them, or pin it in a comment or something that, hey, this is something that I messed up, because you yourself admit that you constantly get shit on your Dark Souls video, right? I mean, we can look at the video right now, bro. You're getting comments from literally a day ago, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago. People are still responding to this, and they're not necessarily positive. And it's maybe you could stop dealing with it if you would address it in a pinned comment or something. You know what I mean? On the video, you would stop getting so much shit for it if you would admit that, hey, I made a mistake here. People wouldn't bring it up anymore. They'd have no reason to. Or anytime they did, then you could, shit on them, and you could be totally justified, and everyone would rally behind you, because they'd be like, yeah, Acerthorn did admit to this. Get on your knees, suck his dick. Sucks to suck, doesn't it, right? You were wrong, he was right. But, that's my point. You're gonna keep dealing with these problems. You say, maybe, when these people, when you get this hard time, it's confusing to me why you wouldn't choose to, again, I think the easiest thing would be pin a comment or something saying like, here's something I got wrong, I admit to it, because people aren't going to go through your entire 200, like you said yourself, not 200, you said it was like thousands of comments. People aren't going to scroll through that entire thing and then say, Acerthorn got this specific point wrong, here's someone who specifically addresses it, here's the one time that Acerthorn actually references it, and oh, Acerthorn doesn't respond afterwards. Now I'm going to make the assumption that that is Acerthorn's admission of guilt, which, that's him admitting that, yeah, maybe he did get this point wrong, which once again, when people say you can't take criticism, you never, fully say that he actually is right or wrong, so it's kind of a reluctance to actually acknowledge, 100% black and white, yes, I fucked up, no, I didn't fuck up. You would save yourself so much hassle. Why not just address it? Why not put it in a comment? The pinned comment, everyone would see it, and then it wouldn't be a problem anymore. You wouldn't get shipped for it. I'm trying, straight up, bro. I don't want this to come off as an attack. I'm trying to help you. You say you get so many comments and it all blends together at a point. You would save yourself so much shit if you just addressed it, and then it would be like it's a non-issue anymore, At that point, you could completely ignore people that say anything about it because they'd be completely unjustified. It's the top fucking comment. If they can't read that, then they're who gives a shit about them? Then they're dumb. Whatever, right?
Well, here's the thing. I do, from time to time, address these things. I make videos addressing these things, like, for example, that 10-minute video I mentioned about why I don't show my videos likes and dislikes. I do that addressing, and at least in my experience, though, to be honest, I haven't exactly taken like a ruler and measured the performance, but to my experience, it doesn't really result in any reduction in the amount of bullshit I get. The only thing that me making those videos has done has given me just a single video link that I can copy and paste in response to a comment like that, and basically it saves me time having to respond. It doesn't save me from having to read the bullshit in the first instance. So why don't I just acknowledge that that's the case? Mostly because, in my experience, that seems to be almost as effective at stopping the bullshit as DRM is effective at curbing game piracy. In other words, it doesn't seem to be at all effective. It's literally 0% effective, at least in my experience.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I don't think it's 1-to-1. I don't think it's the same when you respond to something in a comment, or when you make a pinned comment on the video where the criticism is specifically coming at you, as opposed to something where you have to link an entirely separate YouTube video for someone to get a response. Here's the thing. I don't even agree with the people with the whole, likes versus dislikes. I don't give a shit. There's no reason for you to need to expose that. There's no reason for you to need to share it. It's your channel. It's your choice. Oh, I can't make that. I'm not allowed to say that. But my point, that's different than someone saying here's something. Take the rats comment thing, right? The thing about the rats, when you link the Good Faith Trolls video, I think it's 18 minutes long. When they just want a straight up response or an admittal of something that you got it wrong, who's gonna want to watch through 18 minutes where the start of the video isn't even addressing the point that they're talking about? I don't think you brought up the point about the rats, and don't quote me on this, I don't know exactly, but I know for a fact that it was over 10 minutes in. I think it was around the 15-minute mark, maybe 14-minute mark, something along those lines. It's you're saying that this isn't working, but of course it's not. Who's gonna go through that? I did, because obviously I'm trying to debate you on these topics, so I need to know what I'm talking about when I'm speaking with you. But for some random commenter, of course they're not gonna bother to go through all that. How lazy people are. I know how lazy I am. If someone did something like that to me, where I criticized someone else for a video, and then they respond with a YouTube link, and it's what the fuck, this video is 20 minutes long and my point isn't even addressed except for 2 minutes at the end. Of course that's not going to go over well. It's not the same. It's not nearly the same doing something like that, which again, this is more work on your part because you have to respond to every single one of them. If you address the issue in like a pinned comment or something, or I don't know, maybe you added like an annotation in the video. I don't know if you can do that, but where you're like, "Oh, fuck up here, whatever." Then like everyone would see it, and practically no one would make that criticism anymore, and even if they did, you would be totally justified in just ignoring it, and no one would ever call you out on it.
You say I would be justified in ignoring it? The thing about that is that, no, I'm gonna get bile and piss and shit slung at me no matter what I do. In fact, I've saved this source for a long time. First of all, hang on. First of all, like I said, Dark Souls retrospective video, 15,000 views, and Final Fantasy VIII retrospective, the most popular Final Fantasy retrospective, is less than 1,000 views. Naturally, some people are going to say, well, you only do things just for the views, don't you? Well, here's the thing. Let's say I started doing a passion project, make a series on my channel that I make, not because I think it'll get me views. Not because I think it'll get me views, but because I just want to do it. Like this one. You see, this one, the Harry Potter retrospective, where I go through each of the chapters, one chapter at a time for all 7 books, and give a chapter-by-chapter analysis. That's something that I'm doing mostly because I want to do it. Well, take a look at this. When I started posting this on the Ravenclaw subreddit, you can see how the lack of views that I get are... You can't see the whole comment because... if I click on the view reply, you can see it was deleted by a moderator, not even me, by a moderator, but this preview that you can see in my email, you can clearly see that he's being a snide, snarky a-hole, and he's using the fact that my video has so few views to justify how my video is shit. So sometimes do I do things just for the views? Well, maybe I do, maybe I don't. But even if I don't do things just for the views, somebody's gonna say that my lack of views is objective proof that I'm a shit YouTuber and that I just need to go kill myself. You say that people are saying I'm gonna be justified in ignoring a comment if I put a pinned comment already addressing it. Okay, you may think I'm justified, but it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna get shit anyway. Now, and then let's also discuss the whole point about the pinned comment. Eventually, I mean, there's so many different things that I just off the top of my head right now, there's so many different things I think I would want to put in such a pinned comment, and I can only have one pinned comment at a time, by the way, per video. The odds that if I were to actually do that for every single argument that I consider to be dead and buried by this point, I would have to make that comment as long as the Bible, and that would completely undermine the whole point of me having the pinned comment in the first place, to have everything readily available without them having to scroll. So you say that I should just do a pinned comment? Well, that would work if I only had 1 or 2 things to include in the pinned comment. Wouldn't really work if I wanted to include everything that I wanted to nip in the bud and declare the case closed on. So, I highly doubt that I would stop getting as much shit, because I'm going to get shit from people no matter what I do. And I think I already just proved that objectively. And 2, how am I supposed to... are you sure it would even address the... Are you really certain it would even do the thing you say it would do in the first place, which is which is like, okay, I think you get the idea. What is your response?
Well, my response to your first point about the whole views thing, I mean, that's completely irrelevant. That's like a totally different discussion. That's a criticism for something we weren't even talking about. And I don't agree with that person's criticism, the fact that, like, oh, you got low views on this for whatever. Like, okay, that's a dumb criticism. I don't agree with it. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Of course, I don't see their entire criticism. They said more, so I don't know. But, like, that aspect of it, at least, yeah, but what we were talking about earlier was me saying that you would probably get less shit if you would, like, pin the comment or whatever saying that this is a mistake that I made, and then whatever, and then it would be, like, over and done with, and then people would be able to see, like, oh, well, that's a criticism I had against Acerthorn, but it turns out he's responded to it, so that's fine, whatever. And then the second thing is, like, you're saying, well, there's no proof to suggest that it would help. But, like, you're saying, how do you know it would help? How do you know it would help in this circumstance? But, like, isn't it worth a shot? Maybe. Like, is your statement just that, like, well, I haven't tried it yet, so I don't know if it'll work. So let's just not do it at all, and we'll just assume that it's not going to work. Like, I don't understand. Like, if there's the potential for it to fix it, then maybe it's worth giving a shot. And the other thing about the thing where it's like, if I had to address so many things in a pinned comment, it kind of defeats the point of a pinned comment. I don't think that defeats the point of a pinned comment, for starters. And secondly, it's like, not to, you know, don't take this the wrong way, but, like, if there weren't so many inaccuracies, problems with the review, it wouldn't be a huge list. You know what I'm saying?
Well, here's the thing. I just thought of another problem. As you can clearly see, I already have a pinned comment where I list my follow-up videos, so why can't that just be the pinned comment? I am addressing the most common issues that tend to pop up in these comment sections. I'm just doing it in a video format, which, hey, you're on YouTube, you're here to watch videos, right? So why is me linking you to more videos to watch somehow intrusive to a healthy discussion? So, yeah, so what are you suggesting I do that I'm not already doing?
Well, give me 2 seconds. I'm looking at what specifically the videos are that are linked.
It's the...
Okay, so I see Super Meat Boy, I see the Good Faith Trolls one, and I saw the do you have to finish a game in order to have a valid opinion on it?
Yeah,
correct?
Those are the three that I've done so far. And I'm thinking about doing more in the future. Like as I mentioned earlier, I'm thinking about doing a few more in the future.
Okay. Here's the thing. Like, one, again, people are far less inclined to click off the video to watch an entirely separate, 10-minute long video, more than that in some cases. The Super Meat Boy one's like 15, the Good Faith, I think it's 15 at least. The Good Faith one's like 18. That's, like, again, let's be honest, people are super lazy. They're probably not going to do that. And the other thing is that I haven't gotten to the point about, like, whether or not your opinion is valid on a game that you haven't, like, finished, and we can talk about that if you'd like. But the Super Meat Boy one and the Good Faith Trolls one, they don't really address people's criticisms, like I've pointed out. The Super Meat Boy one is addressing the criticism about like the story problem, but the problem is that you don't address people's actual problems with when you say the story, that it doesn't have a story. You're talking about the backstory, and that's not their argument. In the Good Faith Trolls one, with the thing with, like, the rats, you never actually admit to whether or not that was a mistake on your part, and also you're also just making, like, this side accusation about if you say one thing is wrong about my video, then therefore you must be insisting that my entire video is invalid because of that one point, which, again, I'm not saying that some people maybe haven't said that before, but a lot of people aren't saying it. So it's again, like, 2 of those 3 videos aren't really responses, in my opinion. And then if you want to talk about the story, we can get into that as well.
Well, we're 3 hours 18 minutes into this stream, so can you be a bit more prioritizing as to what topics you want to discuss in detail?
I mean, we've discussed a fair amount of them. I think I brought up the things that you got wrong, the things that I didn't like how you said the things about your fan base, the disingenuous thing with the boulder, just the fact that, like, you don't necessarily respond to criticisms even if you think that you are, and then I mean, we can kind of end it on this, but, like, your whole thing about, like, is it okay to review a game without a story? I think that you sometimes take that criticism the wrong way, which is, like, people that's not the like, that was another big point, I think, in your Good Faith Trolls video, where you were saying that people will say, like, oh, you haven't beaten this game, and then you're like, well, look at these instances where I have beaten this game. But the point, like, obviously in those instances the people are just, you know, they're completely in the wrong. But the point of that criticism, that's not the bulk of their criticism. The criticism is, like, Acerthorn, how did you get this obviously, like, how did you get this super obvious thing wrong when it's super obvious that it's, like, a different way? And then they're like, it's almost as though you haven't beaten the game or something like that. Like, when you get here's my final point on this thing, is, like, when you make obvious mistakes about a game, especially about a story, for example, a game's story, and then you also admit to the fact that you've barely even played the game. I said in my analysis of your thing with Dark Souls, the point that you made it in the game, you made it about 15% into the mandatory content of Dark Souls. So it's like, how can you make judgments on a game's story when you've barely even played it? I linked you the Doki Doki Literature Club thing that you sent me, and you say kind of the same thing about that. Like, you make assessments on that game that, I understand that's just a first impressions video, it's not the same as a retrospective, but you make statements that are definitively wrong in that too, where it's like, you say that the game has no branching paths. It does. The problem is that you didn't get to the point in the game where it offers you branching paths. You talk about, like, how could this possibly be a psychological horror game? And it's like, you didn't get to the point in the game where the psychological horror elements become apparent. Like, Doki Doki is only a 4-hour long game approximately. Like, I've beaten it in less than 4 hours. I think it's a phenomenal game, by the way. I think you should absolutely play through it. It's definitely worth your time. But, like, you know what I mean? And then when you do things like that, and it's obvious mistakes, and people are like, well, no wonder he's making these obvious mistakes. Like, he's barely even played into it. He couldn't possibly understand it. It just fucking lessens, like, your credibility as a reviewer when you make these obvious mistakes, and then people are like, yeah, of course, he barely played into it. What would he know about it? Like, you know what I mean?
Okay, now can I say now let me say my piece. Now, when we were setting up this discussion, I sent you a recent video by YouTuber Jim Sterling, and you refused to watch that because you said it, quote, wasn't relevant. Well, there is at least one section of that video that I really do want to insist that you hear. Now, before I say that, recall in my Good Faith Trolls video, I didn't just say that here's an instance where they say I didn't finish the game and I clearly did finish it. No, my point, that was only an exhibit, and my point that I was trying to make was that people, the overwhelming majority of people, don't actually care if I finish the game or not. No, the real problem here is they disagree with my opinion of the game, and so then they create this, then they just try to justify they come up with whatever excuse they can to say that my opinion is invalid. And even if the fact that I didn't finish the game is a readily available excuse, they'll hop on that like a whore on a dick. And yet, but they'll even use that excuse even if it's patently false, because the thing about the excuse is it is literally just that, a pretextual excuse. They just don't want to admit out loud that they don't like my opinion of the game, and so they'll just make shit up if they have to justify how they're just right and I'm wrong. And to prove it, I'd like to play a small clip from the Jim Sterling video. It's Cyclical Gamer Discourse, about how video game discourse never actually advances, like how earlier I was telling you that I wanted the discussion to advance and to not just regurgitate the exact same shit all over again. But starting at 9 minutes and 56 seconds, and for a little bit less than 30 seconds, there's a clip where he actually addresses this argument. I'd like to now turn the stream's audio on if you haven't already, and turn your microphone off so that you can hear this. I'm about to play this. Okay.
Don't get me started on the old should a game reviewer finish a game before reviewing it. I've got your answer right here. It don't fucking matter. It's a video game review, not the fucking Rosetta Stone. And seriously, you don't need to see all of a shit game to know it's shit, by the way. That's when people talk about finishing a game, when it's a negative review. No one questions the positive ones. So really, it don't fucking matter.
Okay. Now you can turn your microphone back on. So when we were just setting up the discussion here, I said that I had every intention of asking you, how come people only say that my review is invalid because I didn't finish it? How come people only use that excuse when I don't like the game that they like? Whenever I enjoy the game, whenever my opinion aligns with the masses, like with my first impressions video of A Hat in Time, that was a great game. I love platformers. Platformers are awesome, and A Hat in Time is a great 3D platformer. I only did a first impressions video of that game. I gave it a glowing first impressions, and nobody seemed to care that it was that I didn't finish the game before I gave my opinion on it. Well, here, just now, what you just saw from Jim Sterling clearly shows that this isn't even really a problem with me. It's a problem with the entirety of video game reviews. This isn't even remotely a problem with me as a reviewer. The only common thread here, the fact that my opinion of the game is dissenting from the consensus, that really does seem to be literally the only common denominator in all of this. You say that my review is invalid because if I don't finish the game that I lack critical insight, and yet if that were the case, then why doesn't it apply when I give positive reviews? Why doesn't it apply when other people give positive reviews? The thing is, if what you're saying is true, why doesn't it actually hold up to closer scrutiny? I know you think it's true. You're delivering this argument out of, honestly, let's call it what it is. It's just pure passion at this point. You just feel so strongly in this belief that you're just saying this with such conviction, and yet, you know who else said something with 100% conviction that nobody else believes, that everyone thinks is just full of shit? Donald Trump. He said that he won the 2020 election and that it was actually stolen from him. Oh, he totally believes that, even though there isn't a shred of evidence. So when we were setting up this discussion, I was pretty insistent that you provide objective evidence, and this right here is one of the biggest reasons why. Because the objective evidence shows that it isn't even about me having the proper insight, it's about whether my opinion aligns with yours. And that's what I am so fucking tired of. People trying to pass their opinions off as objective fact. And that is what just really just pisses me off more than anything else. The fact that we can't just have a fun little discussion and just have it be and just accept each other's opinions. No, they have to nuke, as best they can, the slightest critique against their precious corporate products. And that is what if at any point in any of my videos or any of the discussions we've had that I come off as just so fucking sick and tired of your bullshit, this is contributing, if not all of that frustration, then at least 85% of it. The fact that no matter that it's all about opinions, and there is no objective grounds for me to not be able to complete the game. The fact that I didn't complete the game does not render it invalid. The fact that my opinion is not the same as your opinion, that's what makes it invalid. Like when we started this stream, I pointed out how you opened your video by saying that you had judged my video based solely on the title. This is where this is all meant to come full circle here. There is no objective facts here. It is all opinion, and other people's, mostly yours, people like you, complete inability to accept that it's all opinion. If people had just accepted each other's the gamer discourse is just so violent, so toxic, that honestly I can't even be bothered to engage anymore, because it's just going to result in a cuss fest. And I just showed you independent third-party evidence that it isn't even restricted to my reviews or my channel. It is only... It is an industry-wide problem, and it's just because they don't like my opinions. That is it. So, I am now going to hand the floor to you and ask, what is your response to that? Not just your personal speculation, but do you actually have any counter evidence to show that it isn't just opinion and people trying to pass their opinions off as objective fact? I want actual objective proof, because I've already provided some of my own. So, the floor is now yours.
Okay, I have provided objective proof in 3 instances. I have about action RPG, I have about the story, I have about the rats. I've also proven... No.
I was asking about
Hold on. Don't interrupt me. Come on. Let's be fair.
You say you complain about me not addressing the criticisms that were launched at me. I want to clarify. I'm referring at this point specifically to my failure to complete the game. That is what I want. That is the part that you just can't accept. That is the part where people just can't accept each other's opinions. So no. We've already discussed the rats. We've discussed the boulder. I want to know some objective proof. Objective, impartial, third-party, independent proof that says that completing a game completing a game is prerequisite to having a valid criticism of it. Because I've shown you proof that it doesn't matter. Can you prove that it does?
I can say that it makes sense that people criticize you for it when you get objective things wrong about the game. You haven't proven anything. Jim Sterling is not an authority on anything. Not to be mean, I don't give 2 shits about Jim Sterling or his opinion. He's
but
not
he
an
is
authority
right.
Okay, well, that's your opinion, and that's fine that you have it, but who's to say that I agree with Jim Sterling? You brought up the point about how when you make a review on a game that, you don't finish necessarily, but, you like it, and then people react so differently, you referenced a Hat in Time. That is not at all a one-to-one comparison of your Dark Souls video. It has 30 views, it has 3 comments. That's not even remotely similar, bro. Come on, you know that those are not equivalencies.
I gave a Hat in Time as only one example, but they commented I've provided hundreds of videos on this channel, and it seems to be the common denominator seems to be consistent throughout. It's only when they disagree with my opinions of the game that they try to criticize me for not completing it.
One of the things that people have criticized you for in your Dark Souls videos specifically that I can attest to is like the story thing, which is like you would know more about the story if you had played further into the game. And who's to say that I agree with the people? Again, I have never once said that your criticism is invalid because you didn't finish the game. I'm just saying that you might have more of a perspective, you might have more knowledge about the game, and you maybe wouldn't have gotten some of these things necessarily wrong had you played further into it. I never once said that your video was invalid, and that's fine that you don't like the people that say that, but here's my point. We keep referencing these other people that are saying these other things. They're not relevant, bro. You're not debating them, you're debating me.
Well, I was under the impression that you were representing that group of people, that group of fans.
No, not at all. I'm representing my point. I'm representing my video in response to yours. And, you know, I addressed some of the comments that you've responded to, and maybe I agree with them, maybe I don't. I think all the ones that we have brought up so far I have agreed with. But I've said explicitly several times in this video, as a matter of fact. You talk about the people who said Acerthorn just needs to get good. I said I do not agree with that criticism. You talk about the people who say Acerthorn needs to show his likes to dislikes. I don't agree with that criticism. You talk about the people who say Acerthorn's opinion is invalid, his retrospective is invalid, whatever the hell. I have never once agreed with one of those people. You can't find it in my comments, you can't find it in the emails we sent back and forth, you can't find it in my video. It's in none of those places. I've never once said that I represent those people. I represent me, my points. So that's my response to that.
Well, I mean, if this if you're not even trying, I mean, the whole. So, do you really care? I mean, do you believe that my retrospective is less valid? Not even fully invalid, just less valid because I didn't finish the game? Let me just understand what your position is before I counter it again.
Mm-hmm. I can respond?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's less valid because you didn't finish the game. I'm saying it's not a good review because a lot of your points were either inaccurate or you made disingenuous arguments. You
keep saying disingenuous. I mean, to me, the fact that to me disingenuous. I mean, maybe this is just another issue with definitions, which we've been having problems with this entire morning. But to me, disingenuous means that I was just acting in bad faith and just completely not even trying, and I wholly disagree. I was giving you my honest and genuine opinions of the game, and you can take them or leave them.
Well, okay, let me respond to that. I wasn't saying that you weren't trying with your criticisms. When I say that you're being disingenuous, I think that you're misrepresenting the game that you're talking about, and potentially on purpose. Well, if it's disingenuous, it is on purpose. I brought up the point about the boulder where you responded to the one dude where you did admit the whole thing about the tutorial interaction, which is context that you specifically left out of your video. So from my perspective, that very much seems like a disingenuous argument. When you responded to the one dude with the thing about Steam and you made the whole big deal about RPG, but you didn't really acknowledge the fact that it's user-defined things as opposed to Steam's actual tag definition, their actual genre definition, and you completely ignored the fact that it said action. I said, hey, it could be confirmation bias or a disingenuous argument you're making in response to them, but the fact that you were disingenuous in the one instance suggests that maybe you would be willing to be disingenuous here. We can talk about your first criticism against the game for having unfair difficulty, in which you conflated, you used a one-off, extremely inconsequential bug to attack the game's difficulty as a whole, which again is like, it's it doesn't really check, because Dark Souls wasn't designed to be played that way with the bug, and all it took for you to get rid of it was all you had to do was reset the game, and it never appeared again. So again, that comes across to me as like, it's not really an accurate representation of the game that we're talking about.
Well, I don't. I just
and
don't.
I can also supply. Sorry,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say that I have I actually have another point to make about the thing with the bug, which is that it's actually a PC port specific issue. I can't. It's impossible for me to like cite the proof, but if you go through Google, like I've gone through like 2 or 3 pages on like Google's top searches for that bug, and it's all people who have the problem on Steam. So it's like specifically a PC port issue. I've never seen any evidence to suggest it's a console thing, which again is just kind of, and I don't think you made this, I don't think this was disingenuous on your part. I don't think you knew about it, because I didn't know about it when I first saw your video. I looked up the bug to see how prevalent it was, and it's only people on Steam, which again kind of goes to the point of like, you know, maybe you don't know the content that you're reviewing as well as maybe you think you do. And I mean, hell, I didn't either, so, you know, fair enough, but it's like, you know, when we're talking about, when we're accusing a game of being unfair in its difficulty as, like, the way you framed it, you made it sound like the game was undifficult, like, entirely, and then you cite this one example, and it's an extremely one-off example, and then I find out on top of that, hey, it's only infecting, like, 1/3 of the people that even play this game, because specifically it's a port problem, not, like, a game problem, so...
Well, you say that it's only on the PC, as if that somehow renders my criticism or my frustrations with the bug completely moot. I mean, think about just less than a year ago, Cyberpunk 2077. Think about how the PC version of that game was, for the most part, bug free, although there was a pretty nasty one regarding your save files that popped up a few weeks later. But then again, You act like when the console versions of that game were riddled with bugs, nobody acted like, oh well, all hail the PC master race, maybe you should just get a better PC and play it that way. Don't shit on the game for the console bugs, because those aren't the actual version of the game. If I'm playing the game on PC and I encounter a bug that is exclusive to PC, I think I have every right to harp on that bug. I don't care if it's from PC, I don't care if it's exclusive to PC or not. It still is negatively impacting my experience with the game. And I really do not see what your point is. Just the fact that it's exclusive to the platform that I happen to play the game on. So, yeah, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But how does that render my criticism of that bug any less valid? I still had to deal with the bug. You didn't have to deal with the bug. Good for you. I really do not see what the problem here is, that I criticized a bug that I actually had to deal with. Would you care to please elaborate on that?
I can respond to that. Sure. I never said that your criticism about the game having a bug was like invalid or anything. If in fact in my video, when I address this point, I actually make perfectly clear. I think I say it like 2 or 3 times. I don't have an issue with the fact that you criticize the game for having a bug. And you know what, your point about Cyberpunk, like, fair enough. You know, we can. Yeah, I'll acknowledge. You know, that's a decent rebuttal to my point. But my point is that I don't think that you taking a very inconsequential bug and then using it as a justification to attack the game's overall difficulty, I don't think that's fair. I think it's entirely different to criticize something for having a very small bug. All I had to do was reset it, never came back. You yourself admitted in your retrospective that, hey, I couldn't even get footage for this thing because I wasn't able to replicate it. That's how inconsequential it was. And then you're using it to act like Dark Souls is this extremely punishing, unfair game, when it's not the way that the game's intended to be played. It's not the way that the developers intended for it to be played. And you yourself admit that it's like, hey, it came up and then it was gone and then it never came back, and it was never a problem in my playthrough past like the first couple of minutes that I was playing. So I don't think that that's a justified thing to start attacking the overall difficulty for. I think that that's a completely unfair criticism. I think that it's not accurately representing the game that you're talking about at all. I think it's totally fine to criticize the game for having a bug. I absolutely agree with that. Saying that Dark Souls is unpolished, I totally agree with that. In fact, Dark Souls remastered, or whatever it is, remastered, whatever the hell, it's so freaking... It has tons of problems, bro. Tons of problems that they didn't address. I could list off a fuck ton. They could have done so much better with it. But I don't think that this one in particular is justification to go... Holy shit. To go after the whole game's difficulty. I felt as though that was very much not... Whether or not it was made in good faith, like, that's up to debate right now. But if it wasn't, it's not a good point.
So your primary gripe with my criticizing the door bug wasn't that it was a wholly invalid criticism to begin with, so much as it was that I just put it in the wrong section of the review. Instead of having a section dedicated to the bugs, I just lumped that in with the game's difficulty, and you don't think it should have gone there.
Yeah, not that you need an entire section about bugs, just that you should have... I don't think that a very small, very inconsequential bug is like an accurate... Not accurate. It's not a good... you were using it as a springboard, I said in my video, to attack the game's difficulty, because let's be honest, what's a hard-hitting criticism against Dark Souls? It's like everybody loves the game everybody says the thing about the game where it's like it's super punishing, but it's absolutely fair. Hell, you made the point yourself, and then you even made this point before saying, like, what is this horse shit or something along those lines, referring to the bug that you were experiencing, and then you're like, I didn't know that Get Good applied to the game's main controls. And it's like, it's fine to criticize the game for a bug, but the what you were using the bug, the point that you were like using it to make, it just felt very much
so it wasn't even the substance of the criticism so much it was the review's structure.
No, I'm not saying it was the review structure. It was the substance. I don't think that you should conflate that bug to, like, this game has this bug. I had this problem with it here, therefore the game is unfair. So it's not a structure problem. It still is, like, I'm talking about the substance, the content, the content of your content. The points that you're making.
Okay, so what is your next point? And we're approaching 4 hours. Can you make one final point and then we call it a stream?
Yeah, I think I'll just give my final statement, my final thesis point.
Okay.
I think that your Dark Souls video showcased that I think that when people say that you have a problem taking criticism, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I've seen some instances where even when you respond to criticism, you kind of avoid admittance of it. I've seen you make points where, you leave out context, or you kind of use them to justify other points, like the whole, let's take the bug, but then let's attack the game for something entirely unrelated, which isn't necessarily unlike the way that you treat some commenters, where they will make a point, and then you'll respond to that point by attacking something completely different that's not even relevant to the point that they were making. I just think that you struggle with accurately representing games when you very clearly have a bias against them, and I think that if you want to be more respected as a content creator, a in-depth analysis person, a retrospective giver, whatever you want to say, I think that it would go a long way to address the things that you get wrong, be fully up in front, like fully acknowledge, just yes or no, I got this wrong, no, I didn't get this wrong, not do the whole video response thing, link a video, stuff along those lines. Yeah, I just think you could be way better with making far more stronger points, admitting to when you're wrong. Don't be disingenuous, stuff along those lines. That's
well,
there we go.
My response is, and I'm just going to issue my closing arguments and call it a day as well, is that you have raised a handful of points that I will be taking into consideration. I do believe that I have done due diligence in responding to criticism and taking criticism. And I also feel that your criticism of my reviewing skills is largely incomplete due to the fact that you don't even watch any of the other retrospective videos that I do just to make sure if I've actually taken that advice to heart. And you don't know if I've actually followed up on them, so you really have no way of knowing if what you're saying about my critique is even true or not. So for somebody who criticizes me for getting things objectively wrong about the game that I didn't finish, for somebody, you tend to be saying a lot of things that I consider to be objectively wrong about my reviewing because you haven't watched any of my subsequent retrospectives to see if I've improved. And I think that is a huge shortcoming on your end. So, and you have given me some things to think about. Some things other things I just disagree with you on. And I just hope that and obviously I have not blocked you from my channel. You are free to continue to watch my I can't stop you from watching the videos even if I wanted to. You're free to continue to post your comments on my videos, and you're even free to participate in my secret joke contest if you are so inclined. If you'd like to win some small amount, really small value prizes, that's all I can afford to offer. But yeah, you are not so vile and toxic that I'm going to ban you from the channel. You're a lot like all those other comments on the Dark Souls video that I've left up. So yeah, you are still free to participate in my YouTube and Twitch channels if you like. And yeah, I'll take some of your advice into consideration. I disagree with a lot of it.
Wait.
And thank you for coming to. Well, thank you for being on the stream today. I've been checking the analytics as the stream has gone up, and I gotten quite a lot of viewers for this stream. So thank you for enabling me to do this collab stream that was so successful. So
can I ask a question?
Okay, you can ask one more question.
You're gonna save this, right? Because I want to show this to some of my friends. I told them I was going to be debating you about the video, and they're interested in what I have to say.
I will be...
not to dick with you, I just want to know if it's going to be...
I will be transferring it to YouTube.
So the full-length thing's going to be on your channel?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, legit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Montyspa, for being on the channel.
Yeah, of course.
So,
anytime.
Thank you. And to everyone else, thank you for coming out to the stream. It was a great turnout, so maybe I should invite people on to be guest stars to do discussions in the future, since this was clearly such a success. So, thank you all for coming out. I'll try to stream an actual game tomorrow. So, in the meantime, however, I'm Acerthorn, and I'll see you guys next time.